All right, good morning, this is Ashley Becerra with the Office of Charter Schools. Excuse my voice. I'm going to go ahead and take roll, so we know we have a quorum. Terry Stoops.
Here.
John Eldridge.
Here.
Bruce Friend.
Here.
Rita Hare.
Here.
Hilda Parlay.
Present.
Shelley Bullard. Cheryl Turner.
Here.
Todd Godby.
Here.
Eric Sanchez.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Good morning. Welcome to the May meeting of the Charter School Advisory Board. I guess I need my cheat sheet here. Okay, the mission of the Charter School Advisory Board works. This Charter School Advisory Board works to ensure the existence of high-quality charter schools in North Carolina. Our ethics statement: board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of the advisory board. Does any member of the advisory board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting?
Madam Chair, I must recuse from Wake Preparatory Academy and ALA Johnston.
I will need to recuse from Movement Charter School when we do RTO.
I'll have to recuse from Central Carolina Academy and RTO.
If so, please state it for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in the discussion on the matter or from voting on the matter. Can I get a, oh yeah, we should pledge. That's a good idea. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda for today?
I'll make a motion that we approve today's agenda.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and we need to approve the minutes from April. Any discussion on the minutes from April?
Madam President, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I must recuse from the April 27th meeting. I was not in attendance.
Okay.
I will abstain.
Can I get a motion then to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from April 27th. Second.
Any discussion? It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Cheryl, we need to also approve the regular April minutes.
Okay. Any discussion on the regular April minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of our regular April meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So, as we know, Lynn Kroger deserted us and moved to Ohio. It is very sad. However, it gives me great pleasure to announce that Dr. John Eldridge has agreed to become the chair of the policy committee. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And so he will be functioning as part of the leadership team. For CSAB, are we gonna do the committees now? The actual committees?
If you'd like to, we can review them. It's totally up to you.
Okay, let's just kind of go through who's on which committee. That would be helpful.
So you can see here, most of you have not changed. So we have our performance committee, which is Bruce, Rita, Hilda, and Jamie. And then we have a vacancy there. So eventually that will get filled. And then policy is John, Terry, Todd, Eric, and Shelley. Cheryl will be a floater. Usually we have 2 floaters. So obviously we have 2 vacancies, so we're kind of work with those. The committees become important when you're dealing with the applications, because you'll work with your committee to kind of, everyone reviews all of the applications, but you'll work with your committee to really hone into certain questioning and lead that questioning during the application process. And when we talk a little bit more about applications later today, for any new members, we can go more into that. But that's primarily what the committees are for.
Thank you. All right, Dave, are you doing the introduction?
Yes, and before we do introduce Jenna Cook, our new consultant, I want to welcome Ms. Mills and Professor Storrs, our Teacher of the Year and our Principal of the Year advisors. Appreciate you guys coming to our meeting, and please don't be shy and share anytime you want to, okay? We appreciate your input. You guys are certainly leaders in the charter school movement, so we appreciate that. Jenna Cook, who's going to come up and introduce herself a little bit, tell us a little bit about her, but she's been on our team for about 3 weeks now. She has certainly hit the ground running. Very pleased and excited to have some of her caliber on staff. So, Jenna, you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Jenna Cook. I can go back all the way to the beginning, I suppose, in my career in education. So I graduated from the Ohio State University, and then I joined Teach for America in 2012 as a core member, and I taught middle school math in Jackson, Mississippi for 2 years. For a public school system in Jackson. Stayed for a third year in my placement city, really enjoyed the experience, but wanted to move back to Ohio. So I pursued my master's degree from Teachers College at Columbia University. I went through their principal preparation program called Summer Principals Academy, geared towards urban leaders in education, and then while I did that, I also did an internship year at a charter high school in Columbus, Ohio, and then following that is when I kind of began my career in administration. So I was an associate dean of students and then a dean of students working with student culture for a charter school called Columbus Collegiate Academy, which is part of a really small charter management or a network of schools called United Schools Network, which is located in Columbus, Ohio. And then I was the school director for my school for 3 years at Columbus Collegiate Academy. So I was at that school for 5 years. And then in September of 2021, myself's got a career change, so moved us to the Raleigh area from Ohio. So I was at Southern Lake Academy for about 8 months as the dean of middle school there before joining OCS in April. So that is me. I would love to take any questions if you have any questions for me.
Welcome. We are very, very, very glad to see you, and I know that the staff at OCS is really, really, really glad. Awesome. Dave's team is getting stronger and stronger. It's a good thing. Okay, the next thing is the reconsideration of 2 applications. The state board sent back 2 applications. Ashley, you want to kind of clue us on what we're doing here?
Yes. Okay, so the state board has asked, there was a possibility that these 2 applications would not be approved. It's Wayne STEM and then Greenville Preparatory, which you'll see the materials as Phoenix Prep. They've since changed their name. If the state board believes that they may not pass an application, policy asks that it be sent back to CSAP for reconsideration. And really, there's no specific guidelines on that. It's usually what this board will do is kind of review any concerns that the state board had. So we have Wayne STEM, you'll hear from first, and then Greenville Prep. And they'll be able to talk to you and you can answer questions. You can kind of guide them if you'd like them to present first, or if you'd like to just go straight into Q&A. And they can focus on the questions that came up from state board.
So can you kind of identify for us with Wayne STEM what the issues were that the state board would like us to look at?
So this is a reminder of Wayne STEM. There was a question that came up about a contract that they had with their developer, Legacy. And that contract has since been revised. The concern was that the contract allowed the developer to, I believe, replace board members. That has since been revised. I've posted that to eBoard, their new contract, where that clause has been removed. And I believe that was the main concern. Were there other? Yeah, I think that was the main concern, was that contract. So I'm sure they can come up and speak about how that has been revised, but that was the main concern for the school.
Ashley, can you remind us when they were before us for the vote that took them to the state board, was that a unanimous vote?
I believe both of these were unanimous.
Yes, they were.
votes.
And so the only issue that the state board identified was this issue of the contract with the development group could change the board, and that's been rectified.
Yes.
Am I wrong in thinking this doesn't take a lot of time to discuss?
Well, I think for the record, we need the people from Wayne STEM to tell us out loud that has been rectified.
Yeah.
The Wayne
You
STEM
guys like to
board
go?
is here, and their attorney is here who'd like to speak about the contract and the vetting of the contract.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Gordon-Stella, and I represent Wayne STEM. I'm an attorney in North Carolina. I work with a lot of charter schools. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak on their behalf. I just wanted to share just a few pieces of information that might illustrate what the issue was and how it's been corrected, and also provide some clarity for the record. The issue that the state board was concerned with was the agreement that was attached to the application with Legacy Impact Capital. And that was the only issue that we're aware of that the state board had a potential issue with. The board has submitted that document with minutes showing that it has been modified. I worked on that document with the board, revised it, and any concerns that might have been present should now be addressed. The thing to keep in mind, though, and this is where I feel like there's some confusion, is that wasn't an executed contract. That was a document in the application to show that they had a developer that was willing to work with them, and it was a template agreement. It was not intended to be a final agreement. It was not an agreement that was reviewed by council. Any agreement that they enter into will be reviewed by council, and the board will understand all the terms of that agreement. But what's now been provided and the board voted on should eliminate any concerns that there is any overreach by the developer, and it's simply a document that evidences that they have support for a facility, but there will be, going forward, a negotiated contract. That is not a final contract, and I was not sure, based on it being pulled back, if that was understood by the SBE.
I don't think the issue was whether or not it was a final contract. The issue was that it existed, and if we approved it like that and then you went on and made that final, we would have a contract where the developer could replace the board, and that was a problem.
I hear you.
So the fact that it wasn't, the fact that it was there but was not executed, really, from our point of view, wasn't an issue. It actually made it scarier because it could get executed after the fact, and then we would have no way to say anything about it.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, the new agreement doesn't have any clause in there that gives the developer any right to any seat on the board or any control over the entity. And any final agreement would be consistent with that. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and then Carla is the finance person for the board, and
That's a
she
question
can speak.
before you step away. With that modification to the agreement, has anything else changed as far as the terms to the template that we had?
No, it was mainly just taking out any provision that insinuated that the developer could have a stake in the board.
And all services of LIC remain the same?
Yes.
According to the template that we reviewed, but it's still not a final contract?
It's still not a final
Okay.
contract. It's sort of the beginnings of one, but
Right.
these things take time, and we also don't have enough information to have a final
Right,
contract.
thank you.
Any other questions that I can field?
I'm not sure we have any other questions at all. The concern really was just this one thing, and that's been rectified,
Right.
so.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Wayne STEM for moving to the state board for final approval.
I'll second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vaquero, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Terry Stoops,
Aye.
John Eldridge,
Aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approves.
Shelley Bullard,
Aye.
Cheryl Turner,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous again. So that will go to state board next month, and then we will get with the board for hopefully your final letter out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for driving the Raleigh.
Thank y'all for your help, we appreciate it.
Okay, so the next is Greenville Prep. Ms. Vaquero, can you kind of give us an update on what the state board's issues were with that one?
Yes. I believe there was some confusion at first with this school, but the main concerns that we've heard since then have to do with the diversity goals within the application and concerns from board members that are within that community that perhaps those goals are unreasonable or whether the school has the plans in place to actually provide for the students that they say they would be attracting. Were there any other?
There were some concerns with the location of the school in relationship to where the city of Greenville and where their students were going to be coming from. So I think if they could address their transportation plan, that'd be helpful also.
Yeah.
So I think there was also the suggestion of a staggered bell schedule, and Greenville Prep indicated that they really don't prefer that, and so they're arguing against that.
Okay, if the representatives from Greenville Prep could come forward and address some of that for us.
Because we're here and you guys liked it so much, I brought more big pictures.
Oh.
Figured we do an update.
Is
real
that the
quick.
logo on the,
Oh, and we got polos, so once it's approved, a polo for everybody. We're gonna send to the state board too.
Yeah, that's,
So they
and that's
have,
such a cool logo, that is,
So
yeah.
we do have some updates on the site plan and, you know, for the actual, this is the mapping of what the community will look like, the school being here, the generational community being here. Some more 3D renderings here, so you can see.
Is that
here.
the school?
This is, sorry, yes, exactly. So, you know, parking lot, this is the daycare, K through 1. I mean, it's all spread out through here. This is the school itself. This is the intergenerational community rendering, which will be behind it as you enter the property. And this is actually the live of what it looks like right now. You can't see it, but effectively this is the property here, and then the school will be here, the generational community will be behind it. We have like a 3D like propped on top of it, but we couldn't get it ready in time. So with that said, sorry. Thank you for, nice to see you all again. Thank you for having us back. So I was just gonna provide some quick updates, and then one of our other board members will address the transportation issues and thus that you had mentioned. So for just some quick updates, as you all know, this is an intergenerational community, so the school and the retirement community are being built together or designed and everything at the same time. So starting with that, for the senior facility, we've had great progress. That is in the final stages of design. We're working on the final construction budget. We got the TEFRA approval on April 11th by the city of Greenville. We have received the certificate of need approval from DHHS for the beds. And we closed the purchase of Winterville Manor in order to transfer some beds over. I think there was some confusion along that as well from the state board, where we provided letters of support from ECU and others who said they approved of us transferring the beds from Winterville Manor to Springshire, not that they were endorsing Greenville Prep, completely separate, but we can talk about that as well. For the charter school development, we're in the final stages of design, and TEFRA dates will be scheduled once the charter is approved. For the traffic impact analysis study, so TIA approved TIA approved by MSTA on April 25th. We have the attached letter for that. And then we also have the approved TIA by MSTA forwarded to the North Carolina Department of Transportation and Greenville Department of Transportation for review and approval.
Awesome, okay.
And then lastly, for the status of the construction budget. So we're working with the architect there and the general contractor. We'll build the K1 and the 2 through 8 in the daycare center in phase 1, and then we're planning to build the box for the high school after, and then phase 2. Then we'll continue to build from there. And then lastly, we're going to issue bonds and start moving dirt, hopefully for the living facility by the end of this month, and for the school by the end of June. Those are the main updates, and then I will turn it over, I guess, to address specifically questions.
Thank you.
Hello again, I'm Ken Walker, one of the board members. Let me talk about there was some questions around whether we're going to meet our goals in terms of minority representation. We do expect to have about 60% minority applicants. I think it'd be very hard for us not to have that percentage, honestly, given the makeup of Pitt County and the areas near the school, which is at least two-thirds minority. And frankly, we came here to help underprivileged kids, economically disadvantaged kids, and so I think, given our focus on that, I think we will have, we'll serve minority kids.
So one of the state board members, who evidently is from this county,
Right.
is concerned about the distance of where the school's going to be from where the population center of economically disadvantaged kids is.
Right.
Talk to us about that. We're not from Pitt County, so it's a little, that's not something we would have even known to look at.
Yeah, we actually, when we did our surveys and we looked for interest in the school, 80% of the survey respondents lived within 10 miles of the school. So we do feel that we have a pretty good base near the school. I think transportation is also an important thing as well. And we are starting with over 50% of our students will have transportation, and we'll adjust we're going to lease buses initially. By year 3, we'll be buying some buses, but our goal is, if we feel like there's more demand, then we will add it. We'll add that back. So, we feel we're addressing that. We also address that with our free and reduced lunches. We're actually anticipating 75% of our students needing free and reduced lunch, even though it's about 53 to 58% around the county. We're just, because of what we're targeting, like I said earlier, we want to have that. And if we don't need it, then that money will go back into programs.
Approximately how long do you anticipate that students from the furthest out that you're transporting, about how long would those students have to ride the bus?
Well, most of them are within about 10 miles, so I think about 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, at most, so it's not going to be that far. Yeah, obviously, in the furthest ends, maybe we're not addressing that initially, but I think the core of our students are within 10 miles.
Help me understand, remind me, where in Greenville is the school located? Like, if I'm at the airport, like, are you north of there, northwest?
Okay. There's one thing from being in California, I have a little disadvantage, like remembering exactly where that is on the map. I'll let my colleague Tony do that one.
Reed will tell us.
Yeah, he'd be better with the directions.
Hello, everyone. Antonio Bunn, one of the board members, former educator. As far as the location, it's located at 3404 Highway 43 in Greenville, which is, you said from the airport?
Yeah, just kind of.
Okay, yeah, it's, as far as the direction, I'm not 100% sure, but it's about, I'd say 5 to 10 minutes from the airport as well.
Where is it in relationship to ECU?
From East Carolina University, it's about the same.
It's not far from ECU.
Not far at all.
Brenda, the reason I was asking the question is there was a charter school at North of Greenville, Ignite Innovation Academy, and
Yeah.
it did not provide busing, and they had a very large minority population. That school since
And they
closed.
still managed to get the kids there, so you're going to bring them on
This
the
school
bus.
is about.
We're having
this school is
3.
5 minutes from that, where that charter school is at.
So Tony, I didn't understand the transportation chart, the projection of student numbers. When your enrollment moves from 655 to 805, bus riders still remained at the same number. Can you sort of explain the rationale behind that projection?
Okay, so at that point where it transitions from 655 to 705, we left it the same, but the plan is to go back and reevaluate whether we need to add additional transportation at that time.
There's also budgeting to prepare to transport up to 75% of the students if we need to.
So that's the other question. Do you have a modified budget that shows the purchase of all the buses that you've now, you plan to acquire?
We do.
You've modified the budget?
We have that, it's modified and can go up to providing 5% of the students. So with the majority of the population being 2/3 Black within 10 miles, our ability to.
Yeah, because otherwise we can't.
Right. So, we did revise those projections because we saw that there were some concerns around our ability to be able to provide busing to all of the under economic disadvantaged students. So we made the budget has already been buffered in to allow up to 75% of students to receive busing if that's needed throughout the totality of the school, throughout the entire process of the school, from the budgeting for the bonds and the revenue. So we're not concerned, one, about filling the diversity goals, just because if the majority population of the students within the area, that would be the immediate area within 10 miles, and even if you expand the radius some, it's still majority diverse, unless we're busing in non-diverse kids from farther away. I don't know how we don't reach our targets.
So talk to me about what your marketing plan is. How are you going about recruiting students?
So that's already been started in the local community. We've really started with the churches. So part of the two main churches, and you can speak to this better than I can. But so we sent the surveys out to the local community. Started with the churches on the ground. The survey responses have been overwhelmingly positive for wanting and the need for this within the community. There continues to be a lot of excitement around it, especially just the intergenerational component of the children and the seniors. Sorry, I lost my train. Do you want to just talk to the
So right now, this is Antonio Bunn again. Right now, as a part of our marketing strategy, we've been doing monthly meetings at one of the local churches where we invite the community out to, keep them updated on what we have going on, getting their opinion and their insight on, what we have in store for the students. And so that's our current, marketing plan. As outside of that, we have the two biggest, most influential churches in Pitt County that, are backing and supporting what we're doing. And, the surveys that we had, they came from those churches and, the community around them. And so right now at this phase, that's, what we're doing from a marketing perspective. And as we get closer to, starting, we plan to dig even deeper in that.
I'm assuming that you're anticipating having students from outside of Pitt County attend this charter school?
The main focus is within Pitt County, within the 10-mile radius of the school is our main goal.
But conceptually, you could meet your diversity goals by incorporating students from adjoining counties. So the idea that you can only do it by drawing on students from Pitt County, was that the assumption that the state board was working with?
The concern at the state board had to do with where the school was located and where the students, EDS students, lived, and that it might be difficult to attract students from there. But what we're hearing from the school is that there are plenty of kids within the 10-mile radius that would meet those EDS goals without having to even go outside of that.
Yeah, I guess, it just sounded like the state board was thinking that this was a Pitt County issue, whereas I see it as a regional school drawing students from adjoining counties, and it doesn't seem that you would necessarily be limited in your student recruitment just by looking within Pitt County. But thank you.
Also, the other part too is that there will be open enrollment marketing, right, once, as this continues to progress from, so we have our assistant, the assistant superintendent of schools that will help with the open enrollment marketing once that becomes, but to your point there, we feel like we can fill the demographics from Pitt County, and we can definitely fill the demographics by extending beyond Pitt County, and the key part is that we feel like we budgeted to allow for all of that to happen regardless. Like whatever our goals are, we feel like we've really allowed ourselves and set ourselves up the ability to execute on said goals.
Okay, so I have a question that's kind of a reverse question that I probably have never asked in the history of my time at CSAB. Your board is not very diverse. So,
Right.
Is there other representation on your board?
We still have some open seats to fill, so we will work on diversifying the board across all matters that are represented in this country.
Yeah, that is not a Cheryl Turner question, trust me.
Is in the back of my
Antonio
mind
was
as
new,
well.
was he here in the original?
Not the original, you were here the second one. He's here the second one, yeah.
Okay. I thought he was new.
At your info sessions, how many, did you keep a tab of how many attended? Would you say at those churches there were hundreds, or maybe 10 or 15 or 20? Did you keep tabs?
Yeah, so on average, we were seeing, 25 to 30? Yeah, 25 to 30 participants, at the sessions.
You gotta step it up.
Yes, ma'am.
Get in the hundreds,
Yes, ma'am.
minimum.
Awesome.
Any other questions for Greenville Prep?
I have one more. What is your rationale for not wanting staggered bells?
The main reason is, given the intergenerational component, by keeping consistent schedules allows for more overlap of the students to participate in different things together, i.e. middle school kids can take high school course content. If you wanted to do things across the school community with the seniors or otherwise, everyone has a similar schedule, so you can do community-related things and not certain people who need to start leaving earlier than others, adds a lot to complexity in that regard.
Now, how would that affect traffic?
So this is a thing. I'm guessing you know. So there was the issue regarding the traffic light, right? And our desire to have a traffic light because we feel like that is the most safe. The powers to be felt like the cost of that would be, fairly dramatic. So we effectively have adjusted and reached a compromise in order for us to be able to have some sort of protected turn into the property, so that the light is not needed. So we were able to overcome that.
Thank you.
Is that?
I know I looked at your campus plan and I'm sure it's preliminary, but the traffic flow really wasn't clear to me. There were 4 lanes and then maybe 2 other smaller lanes, and exactly where they enter and how they exit was not clear. And I just assumed that all that will still be in the works.
Oh, he's got pictures.
Okay, it would be nice if I can understand it now, that would be great.
Yes, this will help. Yeah, okay, we can see here. Okay.
Yeah, come over some more so we can.
So effectively, you're going to come in here, and then for the school. So the traffic lanes will flow through here. You see the 4 lanes here. The school buses will turn off into here. This is where the 2 lanes break off. This is kind of the entrance area. You can see there's like a canopy here if it's raining or snowing or whatever. So that's where the bus stop is. The buses will park back up here. You can see the slots there. The student drop off is this loop that you see here. So the cars will come down here, loop around, drop the kids, and then leave the property.
Okay,
We
so
also
where
had
do
that
you
in
come
this-
off the,
this
ma-
turnaround
when are you off the main street? Like, when are you off the main street and into your property?
here.
Okay, so, and then it runs all the way around, so at your top number, how many kids are you expecting at the top number?
Is it 855? 805. 805?
But you anticipate that at least 50% of them will be on the bus?
Right.
Yes,
50 to
that shouldn't
75%.
be a huge problem.
No.
Yeah, that
No,
should not be.
yeah, and then we had to add this in as well. This is the turnaround for ambulances or fire trucks, to kind of, we tried to think about it all. Yes.
Okay.
You have conversation with law enforcement to help in case traffic becomes an issue? If you had conversations with them yet about?
I don't know if we've had conversations with them yet. I don't anticipate that we've reached that stage yet. But I can tell you the local political sphere is very supportive of giving us what we need. They, realize this is a big benefit for the community. So I wouldn't anticipate we'd had any needs. The mayor has been very supportive thus far. So
I bring that up because I've been fighting the battle of trying to get a traffic light myself, and that's an act.
Yeah.
all right.
But it's an act. But
we'll be ready.
We put a deputy down there for 15, 20 minutes, and
that's what we ended up doing too, and they're off-duty cops, we pay them to come and stay the whole 30 minutes that they stayed for dismissal. They keep traffic flowing. Our buses could never get out because it's a main street. They stop the traffic so the buses can all come out. 30 minutes is all done.
thank you. We will take note of that. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, any discussion? Can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we move Greenville Preparatory back to the State Board of Education for ready to open.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. McCarroll.
All right, Terry Stoops,
Aye.
John Eldridge,
aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approves.
Shelley Bullard,
Aye.
Cheryl Turner,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
All right, it
It's
is
unanimous.
unanimous, and it will go to state board in June, and then we'll be back in touch with you guys.
Can we take a 10-minute break, please?
Yeah. James, can we hit the mics for 10 minutes? Thanks. We're good to go. Claire Porter is on the line and she will be leading this section. Claire, are you there?
Yes, Ashley. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Turner and CSAB members. This is Claire Porter with the Office of Charter Schools. I apologize, I'm not there in person this morning. As you know, annually we do an enrollment and facility update in May for the Ready to Open schools. And typically at this meeting, you will make a preliminary recommendation as to the school's readiness to open, followed by a June 7th final recommendation. So just a little bit of housekeeping and updating. All of the schools, all 8 of them slated to open in 2022-23 have successfully completed RTO 1, which as you know is due in December. RTO 2 items will be due a little later this month on the 20th. And all schools will appear at CSAB's June meeting, either virtually or for some in-person interviews. All of the RTO schools who are slated to open have registered a school leader and at least one board member for the Charter Leaders Institute on June 8th and 9th. This will be held in person at DPI. Enrollment Report 4 will be due along with all of the other RTO materials on May 20th, and we know that schools are gearing up and growing their enrollment every single day. I say this because as of last night, we had some additional updates to enrollment, and the schools are on the line this morning to give you the latest. Schools have been advised that if they need to enact their facility contingency plans and move to another location, that location also needs to be ready to receive or be eligible for an educational certificate of occupancy from the Zoning and Planning Division of the county. So just a reminder to CSAB, CSAB has put into place some minimum standards for a school's readiness to open. The first one of those is that the school is at or very close to 75% of its year 1 projected ADM by June 1st. In terms of a facility, the school will have made substantial progress towards obtaining the educational certificate of occupancy by about 30 days before school is slated to start. The valid comprehensive contingency plan also needs to be in place 60 days prior to the school's opening for any reason if the school is not able to occupy its intended first facility. And the school cannot have received any insufficient ratings on any of the RTO rubrics. And thanks, Ms. Beccaro, for putting up the guidelines for the CSAB decision making. So as a reminder today, you're making a preliminary recommendation to the state board, again, to be followed by the full recommendation in July. So we can move to our first school, which is American Leadership Academy, Johnston. They have exceeded their enrollments for their year 1 ADM of 1525. In fact, they are over enrolling at this point and have a very robust waiting list of 891 students. In terms of their facility, construction is in progress, as you can see, and they do expect the delivery of their CO prior to the start of the school year. If there is anyone who wants to give us any updated information on ALA Johnston on the call, we would welcome that at this time. All right, we can move to our next slide. Central Carolina Academy has a year 1 approved ADM of 282. They have already enrolled 216 and probably more, so they have exceeded that ADM of percentage of projected ADM of 75%. So they're at about 76.5% as of last week with a robust wait list of 102 students. As you can see, they anticipate being in their permanent facility, but because of some international delivery delay schedule issues, they may be a little bit later, but they are looking at the Wicker Center as a temporary facility and are working with that center in the event that they cannot open as planned. This will be their contingency facility. Are there any updates from Central Carolina Academy Charter in terms of enrollment or facility? All right.
I have a question about
Yes,
that,
please.
Claire. Is the Wicker Center already ECO approved, or are they going to need an ECO for that one?
They, I believe that, and I believe we've got Principal Batten on the call as well. I believe that that facility has the ability to receive an ECO or its equivalent from the zoning division there.
Yes, we're working through that with the local fire marshal as well as city inspector and looked at the areas that we can access that for our enrollment. Also to on the facilities update, our facility renovation is looking good, and we think perhaps ahead of schedule that target date of early September, we may be ahead of schedule on that. So that's just an update on where we are, but we are working through with local inspectors on that.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions for Central Carolina Academy Charter? All right, we can move to our next school. This is Movement School Southwest, and they do have a year one approved ADM of 250. They are an accelerated applicant. The slide has been updated as of last night. They are standing at 121 enrollments, which is not 27%, that is closer to 48%. With many other applications rapidly being converted into enrollments. The school did indicate that they had found a glitch in the School Mint application to enrollment pipeline. And so having fixed that, the enrollments are coming in fast and furious. And they have been very busy with canvassing efforts and are seeing those efforts bear some fruit. And I know I see Mr. Hurley there on the line, so if you would like to update us, that would be great.
Great, thank you, Claire. Yes, and I'm joined by the principal for Movement Southwest, Ashley Baez. But yeah, as Claire said, we have added 54 enrollments in the past week. And I'd say it's a combination of two things. One, our applicants start on our website, and then we shift them over to SchoolMint. And as we were trying to figure out what was going on with our enrollments, we discovered a lot of our applicants that started on the website were not getting the right SchoolMint link. And so we spent a lot of time reaching out to those parents and converting them. And then secondly, we have just been hitting it hard with on-the-ground canvassing. We hired a dedicated recruiter April 1st, and that's really started to pay off. And that's just a lesson we've learned. We did a lot of digital up until this point, thinking it would come over from our other schools, and we've learned there's no substitute for on the ground. So we need 64. We added 54 last week. We need to add another 64 in the next 3 weeks to reach our 75% goal. And I'm confident we will do that. I may lose some more hair in the process, but I'm confident we'll get there.
Great. Does CSEB have any additional members for the Movement School Southwest team?
I have a question for Mr. Hurley. Just to clarify, you're saying that you currently have about 121 of the 250 ADM, putting it about 48%. I just wanted to clarify.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And we have another 40 who are in the pipeline of converting from applicants to enrollments.
You said another 40?
Correct. Yep. So we have 121 enrolled, and then in our active pipeline right now we have another 40. But as I shared, we're adding in this last week we added 54, just as our canvassing has really started to pay off.
So you're still 60 short, roughly.
Correct.
And that's assuming that those in the pipeline get converted to actual enrollments.
No, that is not assuming those. No, so we if you count the ones in the pipeline, we are at 161. So we would need another 20. So the 121 is what's enrolled. We've got another 40 that we're converting.
64%.
Okay, so you're saying, you're defining in the pipeline as you're certain that they're enrolling?
No, in the so enrolled just means they've enrolled. In the pipeline means they've started an application, but we haven't completed it, saying that they commit to enrolling. That's what I'm calling in the pipeline.
So you've got 121 confirmed.
Correct.
Another 40 in the pipeline, which may or may not become confirmed. So that's 161. And the goal is
Correct.
4%.
Your goal is 250.
And then, as I shared, what we're seeing though is we are seeing numerous new applications each day, and that's part of how we were able to increase that 54 enrolled in the last week. So we've been we hosted like a Mother's Day event. We've been canvassing, just all the stuff that you have to do in person to get out there. We have current teachers out canvassing. Also, our enrolled parents are now reaching out to other parents. And so that's where we're seeing the number of applications accelerate.
So if all those that are in the pipeline really become enrolled, you're at 160-ish.
Correct.
About 30.
And what is your rate per day of new applications?
I would have to look it up. We had, in the last week, we had, let's say, 35 new applications. It tends to come after the weekend. We do our canvassing and then we see a spurt of new applications. We need to average 3 folks a day in order to get to our goal.
This is Mr. Friend. I guess I would just, so first of all, I commend you for getting these numbers up since the last report that we had. It sounds like you're doing a lot of hard work on that, but it's just going to be really important that by the time we take a final vote in June, that you have even more numbers here. And this is a critical, to state the obvious, this is a really critical period of parents making decisions where their kids are going to go to school next year. You're in a community that has significant choice already for parents. So just you got to keep getting these numbers up.
Yeah, yes, sir. We're crystal clear that we need to have 75% on June 1st, and we're going to be there. And then also we're clear, hey, we need to have a full school on year 1. And so, like I said, we've really learned a lot about the importance. You just can't substitute for canvassing. And so, yeah, it is crystal clear to me where we need to be on June 1st, and we will be there.
Mr. Hurley, this is Rita Hare. I also affirm your work, that you have, the numbers are growing and it's trending in the right direction. But I also want to add this caveat that this is the school that, I don't know how much you were part of the application process, but you had a glitch in uploading the application that made it extremely difficult to read. And then now you have a glitch in the online enrollment and getting students to be able to sign up. And I would just really look at your IT support, who's managing everything, because you don't really need any further glitches. Yeah, you're on our radar. You're on my radar for these glitches that are occurring. So watch that.
What do you consider? How are you defining these students enrolled? Are those 121 students who've submitted, not just filled out your application, but you've got health records on board? You've got how do you?
Yeah, we're defining enrolled as they've applied, they've signed the statement saying, I commit to enrolling my student at Movement School. I submit to starting the transfer of records. And then we also have a team following up with them, getting their birth certificate, their proof of residence, and all of that. So it's not just I'm applying, it's I'm committing to enroll. And then as soon as they do that, we have a team following up with them who are getting their records.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Movement School Southwest?
And not a question, just a comment that, I mean, you're wise that June 1st date is really important, but it's gotta be more, the big picture is more than that. I mean, your big picture was 250. And, so I'd like to see progress, not just for the minimum threshold, but, you know, meeting the true numbers you said that was in the application.
Yeah, agreed. We see also a lot of movement later in the summers. I'm sure a lot of schools do, July into August. But I agree with you. We are pushing hard, and I'm confident we'll get there also by the 250 by day one.
This is Maria Mills. May I make a suggestion as you're just going into your canvassing? Are you targeting any specific areas for your canvassing?
We are. It's been the radius around the school, and we've learned quickly there's some apartment complexes where we're seeing a lot of students come from. We've been doing some work with the local grocery stores to compare foods down the street. And some of the best that we're seeing is actually networking out from parents who have enrolled a child saying, hey, we're so glad you enrolled. Do you know anyone else who would be interested? I think we should have started this in person, about 3 months ago, and we'd be in a much better place, but we've learned a lot. And
yeah.
Ashley, I don't know if you'd want to share anything about the canvassing that you've seen.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. I think in addition to that, word of mouth has been really transformational, as Tim said, and getting families excited about the prospect of founding a school. When a family enrolls, they get to hear from me either via text or phone call. And that's also an opportunity where I have for them to refer them to additional people that they may know that might be interested. And so that word of mouth has really been propelling some of the upward trajectory that we've seen coming in over the last week and a half, as well as getting to connect with families one-on-one. My dad is one of the people that's out there doing the canvassing, and he has really loved having the opportunity to connect with families directly and share more about the mission of the school. And so that has led to more applications coming in and thus more enrollments coming in.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe you wanted to research the local daycare, since when you're thinking about your neighborhood and your populations, almost low stakes efforts. I wonder if you should just just go to all the local daycares and see if they can put something in the red folders for the outgoing pre-kindergarten students. And that way the parents can review it at their own time. They have a nice flyer. They don't necessarily have to show up to an info session, but then they see where the school is and what's going to come next. And I don't know. I know casting a wider net doesn't necessarily yield higher numbers, but you'd be surprised what 5-10% of those flyers might actually yield in terms of admissions too.
It's a great idea. Yep.
And what are the number of miles of the radius? How many miles
So,
out?
I'm sorry, the miles of the radius that we're canvassing?
Yes.
It is about a 3-mile radius. Our buses run out to 5 miles, but at our other schools, let's say around 80 to 90% of our students have come from within 3 miles. So that's really where we're focusing.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Movement School Southwest.
Thank you.
Okay, our next school is going to be Oak Hill Charter School. Oak Hill is also an acceleration applicant. They actually had an additional kindergarten class that was approved last week, so the slide should be updated to reflect that kindergarten class, but the math has already been done for you. So the 216 is their amended year one ADM, and with 181 enrollments, you can see that comes in at almost 84% of the amended ADM. Ignore the pending SBE approval, and they have 95 students on the wait list. I know there are representatives from Oak Hill, so if those numbers have moved even more over the weekend, they can certainly update us. For the facility, they already hold ECOs, so educational certificates of occupancy for all 3 of the school buildings. So the Ruritan building, the gym building, and the main school building. And they will not occupy all of those facilities in the first year, but they do have the ECOs for those facilities as they build out over the years. There's also a little update there with the health department is apparently backed up, no surprise. So they are getting a letter from the health department regarding required inspections. Does the Oak Hill team want to provide any other updates to this slide?
Absolutely. We are currently focusing on building events, building enthusiasm. We just had a school beautification day where we had volunteers, new families came out that will potentially have students in school and helped us do a lot of landscape improvements. We also have a spirit night planned for tomorrow night with Chick-fil-A as another fundraising opportunity. A lot of families are sharing that on social media, and I'm sure we'll be showing up as well. And we also plan to have a couple of open houses over the summer just to continue to maintain that enthusiasm so that we get this football across the finish line come August when school opens. We also have had a slight increase in our total and fully enrolled students. We are now over 85% fully enrolled of that 216 new enrollment projection.
Chair Turner, we do have one clarification. State Board discussed that at their last meeting, and they won't actually vote on the amended increase in enrollment till June.
Till June, okay. Were there any questions on it at the last meeting when they talked about it? Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. I do see in the chat bar as well that Central Carolina lost the feed when they were presenting. Just for the record, they are stating their current enrollment is 243 with 30 students in the pipeline and a wait list for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Does CSAB have questions for Oak Hill Charter School on their enrollment or facility or anything else?
I have a question, just a comment. I've had the opportunity to interact with Kelly at Oak Hill over the last couple months since their approval, and even had a chance to visit them. And I would just say that, you know, we always, when we talk about schools that are on an accelerated timeline and the bar that is raised even higher for that, I would just commend them for all the work that they've done. I think this is an example of what an accelerated charter applicant should have in place and be ready to go. So just a thank you for that team. Yeah.
Great. And then again, just to note in the minutes that the SBE that was up for discussion and it has not been voted on yet. So that is also pending state board approval of the kindergarten class for Oak Hill. Any other questions for Oak Hill before we move to our next school, which is Sabah, the School of the Arts for Boys Academy? And as you all will remember, Sabah began as an acceleration, and because of the single gender and some other issues, it was returned to the regular timeline. And as you can see on the slide, they had put forth a request to add a 6th grade. And I believe that one was approved, correct me, Mr. Machado or Ms. Vaquero, by the state board last week.
Yes, this one was approved.
Okay, so we do have an addition to 6th grade, however, no change to their original ADM, which is and remains 116. As of their last update to us, we had 52 students out of that 116 year one ADM coming in at about 45% of the projected year one ADM. I know we did have a facility update, and I will invite the team from Sabah to flesh that out a little bit more, but I do think that they intended to do a final walkthrough last Friday, May 6th. They're working with a church, and we understand that the church will not require upfit, and we'll turn it over to the Sabah team to give us any updates on both the facility and or enrollment at this point.
Good morning, Valencia Toomer here. Yes, we were able to conduct our final walkthrough of the local church located in the heart of downtown Pittsboro. The church has sufficient space, well over 10,000 square feet, to accommodate our 6 to 8 classrooms, office spaces, and recreational areas, and this church would not require any upfitting or modifications. In our final walkthrough of the church last week with our architect and church representatives, we were also finalizing our formal presentation to the church. The initial recommendation from the church trustee board was to allow Sabah to utilize the church facility temporarily for our first year of operation. We have our county planning meeting established with those inspectors and fire marshal this week, and we're also prepared to, if there's any other questions in the updates from the fire marshal, that we're working with the agriculture and conference center as well as part of our contingency plan.
And Ms. Toomer, do you have any enrollment updates for CSAB, or are you still at about approximately 45%?
Yeah, we're still at about approximately 45%. We have almost 20 parents that are technically kind of waiting in the wings for our facility announcement. We do recognize that our inability to announce a formal facility has significantly impacted our enrollment numbers. And so we are excited that the church has given us an initial recommendation where we will be able to make that announcement and then continue all of our recruitment efforts and our canvassing and continue with our marketing plan as we're preparing to get at least 75% by June 1st.
Questions for Sabah from the Charter School Advisory Board?
When's your next board meeting?
May 17th.
So it's at that board meeting where you feel you'll be able to know for sure whether you're ready to move along?
We have actually been meeting with the board pretty weekly, in addition to our regularly monthly board meetings, because the board it still needs to determine our readiness to open for the upcoming school year. Our board understands that all committed efforts for recruitment have been potentially held up with that inability to announce our facility. And so that's a meeting that we are aware that we have to continue to have to make sure that we're opening on a solid foundation. And in the event that our numbers are not trending positively by June 1st, then our board will have to make a decision to determine if we are ready to open.
This is Rita Hare. I just wanted to note that last June is when we moved Sabah from the accelerated to the regular timeline, and at that time you had a current enrollment of 40. And so 11 months later, I see that you've gained 12 students. And I just want to register that there's serious concerns about your readiness, ability to be ready, as well as the movement of location and now interim locations. It's as strong as your mission is, things aren't trending in the right direction at this point. I just kind of want to articulate that to you. I know you're doing all you can, but I have concerns about the ability to meet the timeline for this year now.
And we understand that as well, and again, we don't want to not open on a solid foundation. We certainly do believe in our mission and in our vision, but when you have a new charter school coming in and, we are unable to announce a facility, it does impact, our ability to enroll families. The positive thing as far as our potential interim sites is that they are all within the 5-mile radius of our original facility. So, that is a positive piece of it, but we just want to have the opportunity to be able to announce our facility and look at those gains and then make a well-informed decision on our movement forward.
Right, I agree. Once that decision's made about the location, that should propel you forward.
Yes.
I want to remind you, last year you told us that your break-even was 103. You still feel that's the number?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Additional questions for Sabah CSAB members? right. Thank you, Sabah. And we'll move to our next school, which is Wake Preparatory Academy. You will recall they were originally slated for Wake and are now located in Franklin. K through 12 reflects their year 2 in grade span. Thank you for the update. It was K10 and correctly it is K12 because they are in a second year delay. Their approved ADM is 1620 and is 1,620, and as you can see there, they are at probably over 98% at this point, but 1,594 enrollments, which was reported to us. And they are also planning to over-enroll, and they have a very robust waiting list of over 2,120 students. The May facility update, they are renovating an existing facility. You can see the updates there on the slide. And they are expecting the delivery of their ECO prior to the calendar start date of their school year. I know there are folks from Wake Prep on the line, so if anyone would like to make any additions or edits to our information, we would welcome that. Okay. Any questions for Wake Prep from the CSAB?
Hey Claire, this is Greg. I'm in person at the meeting, and of course Charter One is the MO for Wake Prep. Miss Parlay is the board chair, and our principal Christina Schubert's on the line. We have over 3,500 applications for 1,620 seats. Today we have about 2,000 accepted enrollments. And as far as the facilities going, we had somebody looking out for us when we were able to acquire the old CenturyLink building. It's a 200,000 square foot facility on 70 acres. Renovation is going amazing. Please come out and take a look. We began construction on the gymnasium facility and the football field. So we're very proud of the efforts there. And I'll just give you a brief update on Johnston. We're at about 1,675 accepted enrollments there, and on our way to 1,800. We'll open that facility this fall. 2 separate buildings under construction. We're putting the roof on, constructing walls in the lower building right now, and the upper building's trailing just a few weeks behind that. But we feel we're in good shape and be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Senders. Any questions for either Wake Prep or ALA Johnston?
I have a question about just something you just said. You said you've accepted 2,000 people for 1,600 seats?
So we made a decision to over-enroll. We recognize that we will get state funding for 1,620 students, and that we will get only local funding for the additional students.
Any additional questions, CSAB? All right.
Can I ask a question? You said the principal was on the line. I'm wondering with the new school and getting some transfers into seniors and things like that, how the process is going and what is the process to make sure they're on track for a Wake Preparatory Academy diploma.
Hi there, this is Christina Schubert, Director for Wake Prep. That's a great question. So we currently have our student services team on board, and so we've been working closely with our families on course selections, and we've been reviewing report cards and transcripts to make sure that courses are transferable, and we're working on their just confirming their course of study so that they're placed in the correct courses for the remainder of their high school career. So we're making great progress on that. I'd say we're about 90% completed there. We just have a handful of students who we're still working with. So we're making great progress.
And how are you guys doing with staffing for such a large opening?
We are just about fully staffed, so just a few more positions, teaching positions to fill.
That's been nice.
Where are you finding these people?
We've been finding some great teachers out there, so I think they're excited for what Wake Prep has to offer.
Yeah, and as CSEB knows, at May 20th, RTO2 is due, and as part of that package, you'll receive a full kind of faculty update in terms of percentage of staff hired and licensure status, et cetera. So yeah, Wake Prep, it's nice. You got a lot of teachers in the pipeline. Lucky. It's great.
Well, we're just so thankful for this opportunity. So we're looking forward to opening and for all that's to come. But thank you guys very much.
Additional questions, CSAB, for Wake Prep? All right. We will move to Revitalize Charter School. As you know, they're opening in Wake County. They are an accelerated applicant. Year one is kindergarten through second. The year one approved ADM is 216 students. They had requested a decrease in the ADM, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Machado, Ms. Picaro, was declined by the State Board of Education last week. Is that correct?
They just discussed that. They will vote on it.
It wasn't voted. Okay, it was under discussion last week. It will be voted on next month. But I know we do have members of the Revitalize team on the line. And as you can see, that is our most recent update via email, but they may have more accurate numbers today. They did report 70 enrollments, which is about 32 and a half, almost 32% of their year one projected ADM of 216. In terms of their facility, they still plan to open in the Gardner Road Community Center, and they're working on a renovation schedule. They're also in the process of working to change the zone use to get an ECO, so an Educational Certificate of Occupancy. And I believe they're also actively working on their contingency, their backup facility plan. But I would invite the Revitalize team to update us.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Dr. Church Williams. I am the chairperson for Revitalize Charter School. Thank you for the opportunity. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to come before you all again and share where we are in terms of updates. Like Sabah and some others, we've had some issues with enrollment, much of it related to having to have some changes in terms of facilities. Our initial facility that we were looking at, their renovation schedule got pushed back due to international deliveries and things of that nature. And so we didn't find out until probably about March that we were not going to be able to be in that facility for the opening of school. We had asked for a July date to take over the building, and they were not able to commit to that. Due to, like I said, delays in renovation. And so our backup had been Gardner Road Community. And so we have put them on as you say, an accelerated schedule because they were originally our backup and now they are our main spot. And so been working very closely with the leadership over there, have had inspections and walkthroughs. We have a punch list of things that need to be done specific to ECO. And then others that are, nice that we would like to have, but then those things again that are necessary for us to receive the certificate of occupancy. We are actively seeking a backup contingency facility per RTO guidelines, but we feel confident that we will be able to open our school year in Gardner Road as planned. We have done a number of activities on our own and also through recommendations that we've received from Ms. Machado and Ms. Porter. Unfortunately, with this situation, with Torchlight being as it were, we still have a commitment to this community. We are in that same zip code and community, and we have a commitment to the children, the families, and the professionals of that community to support in whatever way we can to make a welcoming environment for both those families and the professionals. And that's what we've been working diligently in the background to do. Currently, we have an average of about 2 to 3 applications that we've been receiving a day, but that has been speeded up. We are in active communication with the school leadership at Torchlight in the elementary academy. Have set up some in-person and virtual meetings that we'll be having over the next few weeks to welcome those families, to give them more information about our organization and what the process would look like for them to transition over with us and do that work. So we certainly expect to see our enrollment accelerate over the next few days, with us beginning those activities next week, early next week. And that's where we are in terms of everything. Certainly any feedback or guidance you all can provide, we're here for. We are, like I said, making inroads, and we certainly understand what the requirements are and the dates by which those things are required. You all had great faith in us when you initially approved us, and we ask that you continue to have that faith in us, continue to believe in our mission and to support us, and we will do our best not to let you guys down.
Thank you, Dr. Church-Williams and CSAB. Questions for Team Revitalize?
Did I understand you to say that you need a zoning change?
This is something that we've just learned recently. We didn't know that there was a zoning issue, but we don't expect that to be that's not one of our huge concerns. It doesn't seem like there's quite a bit that needs to be done. It's just a paperwork thing.
Paperwork? Yeah, explain that, please.
Zoning,
well,
zoning is like one of the hardest things to get done and takes the longest amount of time, and you can't really do much until you get it.
So this is Ansel Caceres. So there are 3 tiers in the city of Raleigh. Tier 2 is what we're looking at. There aren't many changes to the facility that needed to happen. It was a lot of inspections that needed to be updated. And so we have been in the process of speaking to the folks over at Planning and Zoning in Raleigh, and they let us know that once that paperwork has been submitted, which we plan to do this week, it's about 15 days to get that approval. And so it really depends on the tier and the amount of work that needed to be done per facility. And so that's just based on our facility.
And that was work that needed to be done to get the ECO?
That's what we've been told from planning and development, yes.
I have a question. Are you currently promoting the school at the Gardner Road location? That is the location that's being announced and advertised?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have been. And so that facility right now is being used for after-school programs and youth sports over the weekends. We have held some events there. We also have our posters up there. And we are working closely with the board at Gardner Road to get their support in letting folks know about our school opening in that area. So we've been working pretty closely with them.
What's your alternative if that doesn't work out at that particular facility?
In terms of facility, yeah, we're working on that. We've looked at quite a few facilities over the past few weeks, and it's our hope that we have a backup, our contingency facility by June 1st.
So it might be helpful, just a couple comments. This is Mr. Friend. One is when you come before us in June, if you don't have that zoning change approved, if you can provide some sort of a letter from the city of Raleigh or from someone that gives us an idea of how far along in the process you are and when they think it might be finalized.
Absolutely.
The second is just you've got 23 days to more than double your current enrollment. That's just to get to the threshold of, I mean, you're at 70, you need to be at 94. I'm sorry, you need to do more than that. You need to
be at 162.
You need to increase by 90. So you got 23 days to more than double your enrollment.
Yes, we are aware. As Dr. Church mentioned, we have been at just about every daycare, every NC pre-K program, and now we are working with the folks at Torchlight on the elementary level to provide information to those families and their incoming kindergarten as well. So we're hoping that will, help bring up our numbers before June 1st, but we are aware of what number we need to be at.
How many Torchlight students have you enrolled so far?
I'd have to go back and look specifically. I would say about 10. But we are just very recently got in contact with the leadership over there, and we'll be holding some in-person and virtual sessions for those families, and now have access to providing them directly with our flyers. So we're hoping in these next few weeks those numbers will go up.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question. So have they been cooperative in perhaps, do I say like promoting or advocating that perhaps yours is a school for them to transfer to?
Yeah, we recently got in contact. We'll be connected this week, hopefully, with their recruitment coordinator, and then flyers will be going out this week.
I guess I just want to make sure that you're really clear that as a accelerated applicant, that the option of delaying a year is not an option, and that you have to be able to open this year, or you would have to reapply. And I just want to make sure that's said out loud so there's no confusion about that as we go forward. I have some real concerns about your ability to pull this off. And I want to make sure that you understand that being an accelerated applicant raises you to a different level, and it does not offer the opportunity to move back to regular timeline.
And we know the demand is there. When you hear about Wake Prep being able to enroll 2,000 kids right across the border from Wake County, should have a waiting list at this point.
At which grades are the 10 from Torchlight enrolled?
Mainly kindergarten.
Only kindergarten?
I said mainly kindergarten. I think first also. I'd have to go back and look at the specifics. It's really at the top of my head.
This is Dr. Church Williams again. If we had a demand after we have these conversations and start our community meetings that we're going to be having with that Torchlight community, if there was a demand for other grade levels that might possibly help us meet our ADM, is that a possibility that you all would consider?
It's not whether or not we would consider it's too late in the process. We have to meet and approve it. Then it has to go to the state board. They have to discuss it, and then it's a 3-month process, even because that's an amendment. So it would be a 3-month process, which would take too long. At this stage, it's too late to do that.
Okay, I just wanted to ask about that possibility. Thank you for your answer.
I guess, and this is Mr. Friend again, I guess I would just, not to belabor the point about the enrollments, but it seems like you're really relying on the future ex-Torchlight students to close the gap. Your application and the approval of the school was done well before we even knew that school was no longer going to exist. And so it seems like you should be at this number whether or not a single Torchlight student enrolled in your school. I mean, that's what we were counting on whenever we approved you initially, or got you to this point.
Yes, that we do understand. And like I said, we are working. There have been some unprecedented events, both in terms of that and in terms of, like I said, the difficulties we've had with facilities. We understand the commitment and we're going to work to make that happen. We are working and we intend to continue to work.
Any additional questions for Revitalize Charter School? All right. And last but not least, Triangle Math and Science Academy of Apex, Wake County. Their year one is K5 and their approved ADM is 600, and the last enrollment report is 600 enrollments out of a projected year one ADM of 600. So they're at 100%, and they have 1,471 waitlisted students. You can see the facility update. I won't read it all, but you can track the progress there on the website. They are expecting to be in the building in July, and everything is moving according to schedule. I know we do have a few folks on the line from TMSA Apex, so if they want to chime in with any updates beyond what's on this slide, we would invite them. All right, well, hearing none, this appears to be fairly accurate for the CSAB, and that concludes the enrollment update 3. Again, schools will be updating you or us through the RTO process on May 20th. So in just about 11 days, when their RTO 2 materials are due, we'll have another enrollment update. And then, of course, on June 7th, the Charter School Advisory Board will make its final recommendation to the State Board of Education for all of the 8 RTO schools.
And we need CSAB to make a preliminary recommendation that we can take to State Board at their June meeting. So when we come back in July after your recommendation, it's not action on first read. So we need a preliminary recommendation to take to State Board at their next meeting.
Okay, so when I look at this, we've got a couple of different things going on. We've got we've got schools that have already pretty much met all the requirements and are ready to go. We have schools that have until June to meet the requirements, and then we have people who have recused. And so we're going to have to do this in a couple of different motions to accommodate all of that. My suggestion would be that we send a recommendation forward for the schools that have already met all the requirements, as much as we can together. The ones based on recusals, a couple of people will have to do separately, and then that we send a conditional recommendation for the schools that have not yet met all the requirements, and there are some recusals in there too that will require us to have to do some motions. So the schools that have met all the requirements and there are no recusals would be Oak Hill and Triangle Math and Science Apex. So if we could get a recommendation on that, on those two.
I have a clarified question about the process, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So we're giving preliminary recommendation now, but we have to do final vote in June? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I guess my question is why? Because there's 5 schools here that have already met that threshold that we established. Johnston, Central Carolina, Oak Hill, Wake Prep, and Triangle Math and Science. Why do we have to vote again in June? Why can't we just?
Well, they haven't, the RTO was it?
They haven't,
Yeah.
they have not completed RTO 2.
That's right.
Yeah.
So our office will be going through loads of documents from everything from staffing schedules, from their insurance policies to all of their different board policies. So we go through all of those and then we provide a rubric to you guys. Also the EC folks will go through all their EC policies. So that entire RTO document gets provided in June, before the June meeting. And if there are any insufficiencies in any of those, which could possibly happen with some of these schools that are doing really well. They just need to be able to address those, and you need to hear them.
Thank you. Just, I wasn't clear.
Yeah.
So it sounds like if there's.
And that's a standard process that we've used for years. Not that that's a reason to continue.
No, I just, thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Okay, so if we could get a recommendation for Oak Hill and Triangle Math and Science.
So this is Mr. Friend. I'll make a recommendation that we move to preliminary, I guess it's the right word, preliminary rated open status for Oak Hill Academy and Triangle Math and Science Academy.
And Hilda Perley seconds.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Wait, remind me, why aren't the other three?
Because there are recusals, so when we go to take the vote, you'd have to recuse from everything because you.
I see.
Okay, you.
Good, okay. Terry Stoops.
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
Bruce Friend.
Aye.
Rita Hare.
Aye.
Hilda Parlay.
Approves.
Shelley Bullard.
Aye.
Cheryl Turner.
Aye.
Todd Godby.
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so Johnston and Wake Prep, Hilda is recused. But those two we can do together with Hilda recused. So can I get a motion on those two?
I'll make a motion that we move Wake Preparatory Academy and Johnston Academy to preliminary ready to open status.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
All right. Terry Stoops.
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
Bruce Friend.
Aye.
Rita Hare.
Aye.
Shelley Bullard. Shelley Bullard.
Aye.
Cheryl Turner.
Aye.
Todd Godby.
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, and so that leaves Central Carolina, and John is recused.
I'll make a motion that we move Central Carolina to preliminary open status.
A second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Okay. Terry Stoops.
Aye.
Bruce Friend.
Aye.
Rita Hare.
Aye.
Hilda Parlay.
Approves.
Shelley Bullard.
Aye.
Cheryl Turner.
Aye.
Todd Godby.
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Approves.
All right.
All right, so then we have three schools that have not yet met all the at least the facility and or enrollment requirements, and those are Movement Southwest, Sabah, and Revitalize. I am recused from Movement. So let's start with Sabah and Revitalize, and we need to, what do we want that motion to look like?
Do we need to have separate them out?
We do not meet requirements.
It depends on what the motion is.
Can it be we move that they do not meet requirements?
Well,
to
no,
move
because they have till
forward to
June.
RTO?
They have till June. Yeah, so I was thinking something more like conditionally, we make a motion that we conditionally move them forward, assuming that they make the requirements by the required time.
I actually think that wording is stronger than their position.
Yeah.
But isn't that the law?
I'm sorry?
I mean, but aren't those conditions, don't those conditions exist currently?
Yes.
So if they don't meet the requirements, why would they be considered a condition?
Well, but they have till June 1st to get there. And if we don't send them forward with a recommendation, we will have to meet on June 1st in order to send a recommendation so that it can go in June. Otherwise, they wouldn't get approved until August.
So we move that we move their recommendation to June to see if they comply at that date, since they have until that date.
Well, the problem with that is that it doesn't go to the state board.
Do we have to do anything on these three schools today?
That's what I was wondering.
Do we, if we don't send a recommendation of some type to the June meeting, doesn't that push them to August for approval?
Yes.
That's correct. In order to get them approved by the July meeting, is when State Board of Ed will approve everybody that you've heard from today. We have to have a preliminary recommendation, and we will explain that to the state board, that these schools right here, this is preliminary if they meet the guidelines or the stipulations or whatever it is that you put on today. So we, again, this is a procedural thing, so we're, in July, that's not the first time State Board of Ed has seen these two schools, because they will not approve something on action on first read.
Okay, I guess I'll figure it out in my head. Yeah, the 5 we just voted on were preliminary,
Yes.
but they are far ahead of the game compared to these other 3. So are we voting to make these 3 preliminary as well?
Well, I'm saying conditionally preliminary.
Usually what you do is you do a preliminary approval for a school with a condition or the stipulation that they meet 75% root.
But what they're having to meet are the same things that these other 5 schools had to meet.
But they have till June 1 to get there, so
Yeah.
So
we
do the
can't
others.
not approve, we can't say now, we're gonna doom you to not be able to open when you have till June 1 to get there.
I think the condition that we consider is the strong language that you use when you're explaining out loud what will happen if this doesn't.
Well, it isn't the same for everybody. So,
Well, it kind of-
oh, yes, it is. All
Yeah,
three of
it's
them
kind
are,
of-
all 3 of them were accelerated. It is the same for everybody.
Could we pass them preliminary and then convene a meeting to remove them in June before the state board meeting and then
We've
David
not
Machado?
had to do that in the past.
Okay.
We've had other schools that didn't make it. Now, where we ran into problems before is that they issued a charter before they were approved, which created a whole
Okay.
different set of issues. But we've done this before, and schools don't make it, and then we vote in June that we don't move you to ready to open.
At the state board's July meeting is when they will give their final approval for any school to move forward.
So your original language.
And that allows you to discuss this at your June meeting.
Okay.
For the schools that haven't, or at this point right now, have not met.
Approve on the conditions.
So we will have the chance on June 7th, if we vote today to preliminary
Yes.
approve them, if we're not satisfied with the progress made between now and June 6th, that on June 7th, we could change our vote.
And this is essentially what we did,
Because
this is what we
this
did
is-
with Elaine Riddick, if you remember.
Because
That'll be
it's
your final
discussion only
recommendation.
at state board.
Okay, can I get a motion then for Sabah and Revitalize?
I move that we move Sabah and Revitalize to preliminarily approved based on the condition that they meet the June 1st standard.
Of an accelerated,
Pardon me?
of an accelerated
An
applicant.
accelerated timeline.
I'll second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded in discussion. Hearing none?
Terry Stoops,
Aye.
John Eldridge,
Aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approves.
Shelley Bullard,
Aye.
Cheryl Turner,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
Okay, you're gonna have to do the next one, I'm recused.
Okay. Can I get a motion on movement in terms of a preliminary recommendation?
I do want to make a comment though before we make a motion here, is that all 3 schools were accelerated, and as you noted, in one school really did a bang-up job in meeting their accelerated timeline. I think this is something for us to really keep in mind as we're looking at accelerated applications, that there can't be any questions, because we're struggling with these last 3 schools to even make any kind of comment, because it's just doesn't feel comfortable. I think we really need to be careful, and folks that are applying, if you're gonna look at accelerated, you need to make sure that you got your ducks in a row before you do that.
So you making the motion?
You do the same one.
Yes, I move that we move Movement Southwest School forward preliminarily based on the conditions they meet the June 1st standard of accelerated timeline.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
All right, Terry Stoops,
Aye.
John Eldridge,
Aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approves.
Shelley Bullard,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
All right. You'll receive much more information about all the RTO schools between now and your June meeting.
Yeah, and John, I appreciate your comments there and agree with you on that. And I think just word to the board or future applicants that may be listening in today, all of us have monkey wrenches thrown at us during the time of writing an application to the point of approval, and you have to overcome them. And accelerated is even a higher bar, so.
I'd like to also ask, just to be reminded, we did move Sabah from accelerated to regular.
To ready, yeah.
You remind me of that condition that made them exceptional.
They had written an application for a single-sex school. After we approved the application, we found out that there were things you had to have in the application for single-sex. They had to go back and do that. We had to get all this extra information.
Mm-hmm.
They were how many months behind, Ashley, before they were approved?
I want to say maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah, they were an accelerated application that actually got approved around the same time as the regular timeline. And so we moved them to regular timeline because they had lost so much time. But that also means they had way more extra time because they had time from accelerated timeline on.
All right, we're good. All right, we just have one amendment today. So this is Shining Rock Classical Academy. They are located in Haywood County. They serve K-9. They eventually will serve K-12. They have 520 students enrolled, and they've been operating since 2015. They are not low performing. They have no compliance issues. So they are a high performing and good standing charter school. And you can see on eBoard and on the screen here that they have decided to change their mission. Their original charter application mission was several sentences. The new one is a bit more concise, but very much along those same lines. Shining Rock Classical Academy cultivates critical thinking skills and fosters a lifelong love of learning through rigorous academics, experiential education, and our core values of integrity, respect, compassion, responsibility, wisdom, and leadership. Any questions?
Are they still a CFA school? I noticed they take that out of the mission.
Yeah, I believe they are. It's still, their name still has CFA in it. I'm not exactly sure what the current status of their partnership is, but I know that Melanie Norman is on the line. If Melanie, do you have anything that you can add about your relationship with CFA?
Sure, I do. Thank you guys for taking this up again. So we have ended our affiliation with CFA, and so as part of our bond process and completing phase 1 and phase 2 of the permanent facility, we went through the process with the Secretary of State to change our name to reflect that we're no longer in partnership with CFA.
Okay, and you just want to just reach out to me so we can get that officially done in the office as well.
Okay, can do that.
Can I get a motion on this amendment?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the amendment for Shining Rock Classical Academy to modify their mission statement as written, as recorded here.
Another Parlay seconds.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Terry Stoops,
Aye.
John Eldridge,
Aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approves.
Shelley Bullard,
Aye.
Cheryl Turner,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Melanie.
We are scheduled, Dr. Tomberlin was scheduled at
Thank
11
you.
o'clock, which is momentarily. Do we want to go ahead and have him and then do our stuff and then move our NC Access stuff behind Dr. Tomberlin?
Why don't we We can, why don't we do, the state, scholarship
Do the
program. I'll take
scholarships
for a
and then,
second.
and then do, Barbara after that?
Yeah.
As Barbara, where is she, is she still smiling?
Dr. Jones is gonna lead that discussion.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think one of the favorite things we do in the professional development workflow is award the seniors and spend time doing recognition ceremonies. So this year for the People Helping People Scholarship through the SECU Foundation, 34 of our secondary charter schools presented seniors from around the state. Pretty amazing young people as always. And we were tasked with picking 3 finalists as well as 3 alternatives. Each one of the young people will receive $10,000 over 4 years for going to a North Carolina state school. Of the 34 candidates, 10 of the 16 NC system schools were represented. And our 3 finalists that were awarded the award were Ashley Smith of Research Triangle Charter High School, who will be attending the University of North Carolina at Charlotte in the fall. Anna Hardis from Cornerstone Charter Academy, who will be attending UNC Greensboro. And Brittany Senior from Union Academy, who will be attending Appalachian State University in the fall. Just really quick, some of the things about these amazing young people. Brittany spends a lot of time working with the community shelters in her community, and she's at Union Academy. Anna does mission trips with her church, and I would love to get on some of the planes that she's been on and places that she's gone with her and her mom, and she's really committed to working with the homeless and children with disabilities. And Ashley has a passion for social justice, and it serves as the vice president of our Black Student Union for the school, and had the unique opportunity of working with a Duke graduate student to film Black student life at Duke's campus. And so please acknowledge these amazing candidates. Our 3 alternates were equally as awesome as well as the other candidates we had. And so the 34 this year represented 10 more than we had apply last year, 24. And some actually came in late past the deadline. So the number of applicants is increasing as this goes forward. The SECU Foundation reached out after this was over to get a really good understanding of the charter landscape, and asked them like how many high schools we had, how many seniors we had, because they're going to have a foundation meeting so that they can be more representative of us. As you know, in the past, they've kind of put us in a region, and so we're all, all 55 high schools are competing as opposed to an Orange County and a Guilford County or whatever. And so they're trying to figure out a way this summer to make it more representative so that we can get a more robust group of our candidates and not have to cut it down to 3. So, thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations to our students.
Yeah, we're still here.
Can we take a 5-minute break before we go to Dr. Tomlin?
Sure can.
Thank you. Is he live or is he remote? Is he gonna come in person or is he online?
We're gonna go to NC Access.
Okay, works for me.
I just emailed.
Okay.
Cumberland.
We get to hear from Dr. O'Neill. Yay! Oh, Jay's coming too. We got a group.
Double whammy.
Yeah.
What's your face?
Okay. Well, good morning. We are here to announce a new exciting initiative that we're starting this summer and will last through the upcoming school year. And so we're calling it the Charter School Transformational Leadership Program. And Barbara's going to discuss specifically what that is, but I wanted to give you a little background kind of about where we are and sort of what we've been thinking. So we've obviously been implementing since 2018. And with the initial goals of the grant, we really focused on the sub-grants and supporting the schools to start removing barriers. And part of that was the development of leaders through the Access Fellowship. And we've thought a lot about development of leaders over the last couple of years. And so now that we're sort of in year 4, going into year 5 of our state grant, our schools are going to continue to implement. But one of the things that we wrote into our supplement in 2019 when we were awarded the additional $10 million was supporting low-performing schools. And a big piece of that was leadership development training for school leaders and support for the Office of Charter Schools for us to be able to support schools that are identified as low and continually low performing. And so currently 42 of our schools are categorized in one of those 2 categories. And so in collaboration with OCS, we are going to be able to invite those leaders of the low performing schools to participate in this newly created development program that we're calling the Transformative Leadership Program, with the ideal goal being that we want to start moving schools out of those categories, right? So can we move schools that are, our ultimate goal has always been to move schools up in letter grades. So we expanded the sub-grant program to include schools that have been Cs for 3 consecutive years and meeting growth, so we can potentially move them into the B category. And so now the hope here is to move schools that are low and continually low performing, schools that are rated as D or F, to move up in their letter grades. And so this is just a reminder kind of how the program is funded. You've seen this before, but that technical assistance budget, one of our requirements as a grantee under the state entities program is that no less than 7% of our funds can go towards technical assistance. And so that's a pretty big chunk of money when you think about our $36 million award. And so a big chunk of that funding has gone towards leadership development. The Access Fellowship, our Aspiring Minority Leaders Program, we're rolling into, I think we'll announce this at some point, but we're able to provide some letters training for our charter schools that aren't under the state contract to get letters training. And so with that funding, we're able to implement this program and create a cohort for a year-long development program for our leaders of low-performing schools to hopefully equip them with some of the skills necessary to lead a transformative program in their school and improve outcomes for students. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. O'Neill to talk specifically about what the program is going to look like.
So good morning. I am very excited about this program. Jay said I can come up with an idea like that, but I've always had some concern about the low-performing schools since I arrived in the Office of Charter Schools. So this is a program that we're going to provide high-quality, customized professional learning for a cohort of charter directors or principals with a focus on dramatically accelerating their leadership capacity and improving student outcomes at their respective schools. Dave and I have had many meetings with Alex Quigley, and the sessions will be held by Alex. And, he's the former chair of the Charter School Advisory Board, and he's bringing with him someone from Durham called Jason Giles. The goal of this program is to provide leadership skills to school leaders who, to assist them with pioneering their current low-performing school status to a new level. We think that if we just give them that support, that we may be able to move them at least one level up from the current level. As you all know, that school leadership is critical to turning around low-performing schools. The cohort sessions are designed to examine the effectiveness of their decision-making, programmatic strategies, and the engagement of multiple stakeholders in an agenda to change their low-performing status. All right, selection process. Oh, no. Dave. Yeah.
This is another great example of how the NC Access program in North Carolina has reached out to all schools, not just the schools that have qualified to be in the program. Example was the fellows, guest fellows program, and then we invited Restart Models leaders to come to the fellows program. And then the Inspiring Young Leaders, Minority Leaders was another program, and then now Dr. O'Neill is an Idea a Minute person, and I am so excited about the ability to have these leaders get this intensive training from Alex and his partner for one entire year to move their school out of low performing. I know that we're giving preference to leaders from low performing schools, and if that cohort isn't filled by those leaders, we're going to open up to all of our leaders. And I've talked to several leaders just chomping at the bits to try to be included in this. Again, I've said this a lot of times, the NC Access program, I don't think is a state in the country that's doing a better job with these funds as Jay and Barbara and their team are doing, how we're affecting all schools across North Carolina. But I think it's also very important that we're giving a preference to low-performing schools. And if a low-performing leader from a low-performing school, a leader, decides not to participate in that, we're going to let you know when they come up for renewal. We're going to say, this was an opportunity. This leader did not take advantage of it. And, they're right there at that 3-year, maybe not renewal phase. I think this would be really, really important for you to consider whether is this leader or this board truly committed to improving their school to get out of low performing. So again, I am so pleased with our NC Access team and what they are doing, not only monitoring the schools that have received the funds, but how can we effectively use the funds to help all schools in North Carolina. And I just get excited every time we talk about it. So thank you for your hard work.
Well, I want to echo what Dave just said. The training that they are talking about is unbelievable training that I paid $20,000 to go get and paid $20,000 for my principals to go get. And then we have been sending our kids, our teachers to, our coaches to Henderson Collegiate for several years to get this training. It's invaluable training. If you implement, you got to do it with fidelity, but if you implement, you will see improvement in your schools. And so I know that when you're, and I've been there, when you're low performing and everything's coming down on your head, it seems like you don't have time. But this is the thing that you need to make time for, because this is the thing that's going to make everything else work. And I honestly think that if, particularly for schools that have had multiple 3-year renewals and are still low performing, the decision not to participate in this, to me, speaks volumes about whether or not you really and truly want to be successful.
Okay, great. So the selection process, we sent out an invitation on May 1st. And we need to hear back from them by May 30th. You had to apply. And they will get their acceptance letter on June the 5th. We will host tomorrow at 10 a.m. online, a Zoom, an information session for them to come on to. We'll ask questions. They can ask us questions. And we will let everybody know by June 15th.
So Barbara,
yes.
I know initially that you're targeting the low performing schools.
Mm-hmm.
When will, if space is open, when will schools that aren't low performing but want the training have an opportunity to apply?
I say in Okay, if you, Ashley, go to page 7.
Sorry.
So that's all right. Here's our schedule, May 10th. And then we have a session on July 26th that's here at DPI to just get everybody started. We're skipping August because, school is starting. And then we have it every Tuesday of every month. Everything is scheduled. And they're all here at DPI except October the 18th, we couldn't get room 150. Now, I've had 4 people accepted, emailed and said they want to attend. I'll say around June 5th, I'll know. We'll kind of know. And then we'll start looking at sending it out, multiple sources, the newsletter. And
don't we have 42 low performing schools?
Yes, 42 people.
Yes, so we should be seeing numbers coming in faster than that.
Yes. But we're also opening up the NC Access Fellowship Institute this year. So we're only going to have a couple new fellows coming in. So we decided to do the best of all NC Access Fellowship Institute sessions. And then we're going to have a whole year session and open it up to all charter schools. But you have to apply to come and commit to coming. And these applicants have to commit to coming to 9 out of 10 sessions. Yes.
Barbara, how were these invitations sent to? Was it sent to the head of the school, or who received the invitation?
Head of school.
Because I'm just curious as to whether or not we need to also consider their boards.
Yeah, I was thinking to the board chair as well.
And highlight how important it is for their administration to attend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have
and very often
list
that
here.
kind of stuff never gets said to the board, and then when we get to the board, when we get to the meeting where we're talking about closing you, the board is hearing it for the first time.
Right. It's just one-page application to get information, so we can get information about the county, how long they've been a leader, and one question: why would you like to attend this institute?
Yeah, I would
And
just
they
say
have to
information
sign.
about the institute to the board leaders. They don't need the application, but just information about the institute to the board chairs and the importance of taking advantage of this opportunity.
Right. That's in the letter.
Okay. Yeah, I'd send it to board chairs.
Yeah, board chairs need to see it.
How many seats are available in the training?
42 if 42 would like
That's
to
the maximum
come.
capacity?
Well, not really. We can take it to about 50, but we want them to have a more intimate space.
Sure.
But I sort of said 50 would be enough for having a good session.
And the training is there's a lot of practice that goes on
Mm-hmm.
in the training. So you want it. You don't want the group to be so large that you can't get that. Although I think there were hundreds there when we went, but that you can't get that practice time in.
So who wrote the curriculum or published the curriculum that's being used?
Alex, and he hasn't finished doing the writing descriptions, but we got the titles.
Okay.
Of the
so he
sessions
is
now.
author of the curriculum.
Yes.
So when our chair referred to $20,000 for the training, was it a different training?
No, it was the where this comes from, which was Relay, and it's a graduate program, and it for 2 weeks it costs $20,000 to go. That's not the principal level, that's the superintendent level, right? The $20,000 one. The $12,000 was there's a $12,000 level that's 1 week, and then there's a $20,000 level that's 2 weeks.
But do they get credits toward licensure renewal?
Yes, we did get licensure renewal credit. We did.
Now, if we wanted to consider the schools that are not low performing, then how would that affect just being 4 only if you're going to have a max of 50 in the training?
I think that those topics are about leadership. It's about changing, making changes in your leadership style for the betterment of your school. So I think this would be general enough for everybody. But the other thing that we're going, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just thinking about the room, the capacity of
Oh.
those who want to apply and attend outside of the low performing schools.
Right, I think we have the capacity for more, but when you look at what the Institute about, and I think 50 is enough for the first one. We might hold the second one next year. But I forgot to add on here, if you sign up for the leadership program, we have 200 slots of Teach Like a Champion that we're paying for. So we're also saying that if you sign up for the leadership program, you have first dibs on those slots for Teach Like a Champion.
Oh, okay.
And we're also doing the leaders training.
Okay, good. That
So.
explains it. Thanks.
May I say something? This is unbelievable. Like, I'm over here clamoring for both of my APs to potentially go. When you mentioned Teach Like a Champion, I was like, I can't shove that book down their throat fast enough. And I'm a little disconcerted that our most needy schools are not signing up. I mean, was it a strongly enough worded email? I don't know.
Well,
Like,
this-
if I was ready to close, I would go every day, and both of my people would go with me, and my board chair would be with me, because I feel stressful to be low performing. And this is unbelievable training. Like, as I'm going through this, I'm like, I'll get one of those spots. Don't worry, I'll sign up right now.
We're buying the books, but we do have Teach Like a Champion will be offered to all schools. But as something to go along with that leadership training. So if you get the leader on the right page, then you get the teachers on the right page. We hope we can affect some change
Oh, I
there.
think it's wonderful. Yeah, I'm excited for you, and for Teach Like a Champion to have the principal know what they're talking about when they're doing
Right.
their observations. You can't have one without the other, but it sounds wonderful. I hope you get a
Okay.
full house.
All right. You want the leaders training?
I'm emailing you, don't worry.
You want the letter? You want the letters training?
Letters training stresses me out. I'm not ready for that.
I really have to say, to Jay and Barbara and that whole team, NC Access is superior.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
And we really need to get the word out on it. It is superior. What you guys have done with that money and how that has affected our community is phenomenal. Just phenomenal. I greatly appreciate you
I
guys.
have to say, Jay, I know how to spend it, but I have to ask Jay. Jay is a whiz on their money. You know, he's a tight budget. We'll probably have money for the next 10 years. All right,
I'll
thank
tell
you.
you too, Joe, add in there, super responsive. Any questions always get answered. You guys are great.
Thank
I'm looking
you.
forward to working with you for the next few years.
Too.
I love working with the Equity Working Group too.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that was a whole nother just awesome,
Right?
awesome thing that they got going.
All right,
It's
thank
that, you guys, if you have not interacted with NC Access, I'm telling you, they're the best thing going.
Well, thank you.
Okay, did we find Mr. Tomlin?
Haven't heard from him.
All right, so
Ava.
Melanie.
Yeah,
Okay, so applications.
That looks scary.
Can you see
In small print.
Class, can you see it?
Morning. Yep, still morning. Melanie Rackley, Office of Charter Schools.
Lower the lights a little.
So our application cycle ran from the end of January, closed on Friday, April 29th. And so we received 20 submitted applications by 5 p.m. on April 29th. And so that list is here for you. We have 4 accelerated. So, we talked about the threshold being more rigorous for those. So you can expect to see 4 accelerated applicants within this cohort of folks. And so they would be opening in the 23-24 school year. You'll see the composition geographically with the counties there. Some we didn't see last year, but we obviously have Mecklenburg and Wake, but we have some newcomers on the horizon here. So that's it. Those are the 20. What we've Mr. Machado and I have already begun to look at the composition of those accelerated applicants, how they submitted their facility information, et cetera. So that work has already begun as it relates to what they have. And so we do know, and we've confirmed that some of these accelerated schools actually already have facilities. Some we're, still trying to determine what's going on. But those questions are asked explicitly within the application, so we'll have that information to you. And then Ashley, if you can go to that calendar. And so just reminding you all, and forgive me there. Okay, great. And so in June, the applications will be released to you all as a board through the Edlusion platform. Right now, what's going on is the completeness check phase. So the OCS staff is reviewing all of the applications to make sure that they are complete. And then in statute, there is a 5-day requirement that if applications are incomplete, those boards have 5 days to submit all of the documents. So we're finalizing that right now as in terms of what is missing. Then we'll provide those applicants 5 days to submit all that they need to us. Once that's complete, we will then begin assigning those applications externally to those evaluators that will do the summary feedback as in years past. But to your board, those applications will be released in June. You will then have June through August to do your summer reading and review. So this is different than in years past when last year, I think we released the applications to you all in August, and then you read them, generally the month prior, et cetera. So this timeline will allow you a summer reading and review process. So we think that this gives a better focus and a better attention to the quality of the petition. So that's essentially what will happen. We are going to ask that all the external evaluators provide all of their feedback by August 15th. And so that would be well ahead of the first interview that will be held in September, which would feature those accelerated special request applicants. So that's who we would hear from first in September. And so Ms. Beccaro and the application team are working to kind of create that interview calendar. But essentially that would run from September to December based upon the timeline that was approved. And so we'll hear from the accelerated folks first. If September allows us to actually hear from those standard timeline folks, we will actually build that in, that you all will begin the first round standard applicants in September as well. And then you'll see that we'll close out and complete the special request in October. The first round folks would continue into October, November, and December. And so the recommendation for special requests would go to SBE. So for any accelerated folks, we're asking that those recommendations go to SBE in November. And then for the standard folks, those recs would go in January. So that's kind of the shift in the application timeline. So any questions?
Can you go back to the first worksheet, please?
Sure.
And I guess my question is more of a request. Is it possible you could send this to us, but then add a column that identifies and flags which ones have been before us before?
Repeat applicants?
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Which ones have EMOs?
Yeah.
I
So
don't have
we
a question,
do,
but
yeah.
I do have some comments.
Okay.
For the board specifically. In CSAB leadership, we've been talking about this process of reviewing the applications. And a couple things that we kind of thought about. In the most recent round, a couple of things came up that we just missed. And these applications are hundreds of pages, and we're reading 4 and 5 of them a month. And so the fact that we just missed something is not a surprise. But we can't afford to miss it nonetheless. And so we are suggesting that each of the committees assign people within the committee to be an expert on a particular part of the application. Now, you still have to read the whole thing because otherwise you can't see whether it all comes together. But we need to make sure that somebody has thoroughly read every single section of it. Example, the bylaws. I looked at the bylaws, I skimmed through the bylaws, but I missed the part that said that the developer could replace the board. This is huge. And so we just need to make sure that every piece of it, somebody has really looked at it in depth and that we've all read the whole thing. And so the committee chairs are going to ask you guys they're going to assign those areas to you in the applications. And then when I'm the lead, then I'll just use those same people on whichever committee I'm assigned to. The other thing is, it will be very easy to let the summer get by you and not have read 20 applications because they're not beach reads, you know what I mean? So just being diligent about it. We aren't going to have very much time. We're really, talking 3 months to get through all of those. And the beginning of school, as we all know, is always crazy. And so just being diligent to try to read them over the summer. And they're saying that more to me than the rest of you. But it's important that we try to read them over the summer so that we are prepared. And this time when you start, you're not going to have the evaluators' opinions yet, which I think is probably a good thing, because then you make your own, then you go back and look at what the evaluator said, and I think that gives some good balance. 20 is less than we thought we were going to have, so that's a good thing. But you multiply that times 200 pages apiece, and it's still an awful lot. And we've already done a round this year. So this is going to be a lot, and it's a heavy lift, and I appreciate people being willing to do it. I just want to encourage you to make that some of your summer reading.
I have a question. Could there be another standard that just says meets, as opposed to meets but?
Yeah.
Needs more clarification. Because if it's a meets and needs more clarification, to me that's not meeting. So could you add a fourth that just says meets?
You just actually meet or you don't. So there's a meets and then there's a needs more clarification.
Right. And then you meet.
And then there's the exceeds.
And then exceeds.
And then exceeds.
Or you just don't meet at all.
That would probably have to go into the future offerings with the platform where we build that out. I don't know. I'll ask that of the developers in particular. And then looking back at the rubrics that were created prior and what that actually means.
And what that looks like based on the rubric.
Right. The other piece is like to make sure that I know that we have new board members. I believe that everyone here has their sign-in as it relates to Edlusion. But if not, if you need any assistance with recovering that, certainly I'm available to do that. I think also what we might want to actually make you all aware of, last year in particular, there were CSAB members who provided commentary directly in the platform. And then when the summary feedback rolls out, because it's public and because the boards get that was inconsistent, right? And so this year we've shifted because that could be kind of seen as a plus or a minus, like, oh, the CSAB member provided commentary here, but not there. So to be consistent, we've actually, and if you all are okay with that, removed that particular feature so that all of your commentary is done in the fashion in which you see fit outside of the platform, so that it's consistent when summary feedback is provided to the applicants, that they will see the external evaluators and the internal evaluator that is assigned. So that's different than last year. So we thought that to standardize it and make it more of an objective process.
Do we still have to rate though?
You will not have to rate
we're just reading. In the platform, we're just reading.
Yes. I'm going to double check and make sure of that, but the ability, well, you don't want to have to rate, and so I'll make sure that is actually what is in your level of
that's a good thing.
access.
But again, can we have a meet real soon?
Yeah, we'll work on that. Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Thank you, Melanie. We'll get to see lots more of you this fall.
Yes.
Dr. Chamberlain's here.
Dr. Tomlin, so nice to see you.
Good morning. My apologies. I got caught up in a meeting that ran long, and thank you, Mr. Machado, for spurring me to action. So I am here today to talk to you about the what we're calling the Pathways to Excellence initiative going on with PEP-C. For those of you who don't know, PEP-C is the Professional Educator Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission, which is the advising board to the State Board of Education on matters related to licensure and preparation for our North Carolina's educators. So what has been proposed here back in, I think, the late part of last year, a group called the Human Capital Roundtable had done some suggestions on how to improve licensure that they presented to the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education responded positively to those recommendations and remanded that work to PEP-C for formal policy recommendations. So this presentation today is to kind of guide you through where those subcommittees are in relation to this reform effort around teacher licensure, and hopefully I can answer some questions on how this would or would not impact charter schools as it moves forward. I want to be very clear, this is not the final model. What DPI did in this, the PEP-C committees that were working on this pathway were struggling because they are having a hard time seeing this as a complete, cohesive plan. And so what DPI did was said, let's take all these pieces and put them together in a cohesive manner so you can see how this works from beginning to end, with the idea that then they would refine that and change things they didn't like. We might have put things in that they didn't care for, or they didn't want that necessarily. So they have the final approval on what gets sent to the state board. This was just a proposed model to help guide their work. They will continue working on this until late summer, when they're expected to have a recommendation to the state board for what this should look like in its final version. This is just for your information, the subcommittee members that are working on the different parts of this, and then the timeline of how we got to where we are, and then some of the guiding principles behind this work. What is this model trying to achieve? So if you look at our current system, teachers, it's a stagnant career ladder. There's no advancement. There's no real career opportunities for teachers unless they want to leave the classroom. It's very unclear how one enters and exits from the teaching profession. Both those things are, in fact, important for any profession. You have to know how you get into the profession, and you have to know the requirements that you have to meet to remain in that profession, and what happens if you don't meet those requirements. We have very rigid and complex pathways to licensure. There is not a lot of opportunity. Teachers cannot demonstrate a teacher's effectiveness in the classroom has nothing to do with whether they get licensed or not. It's all about passing a test. It's not about whether they're great teachers or not. This also inhibits teacher diversification, in that we know disproportionately minority candidates fail these licensure exams at greater rates than their white counterparts. But we do not see that same difference in the effectiveness of those teachers. So those teachers are still doing the same great work in classes with our students, but differentially they're excluded from the profession because they have lower pass rates on these licensure exams. And currently, promotion or advancement in the salary is anchored by time. So what we're proposing here is that we create a licensure system that supports a career ladder with options for teachers to advance while remaining in the classroom. There are clear expectations about how they enter the pathways and how they exit the pathways if that's the case. Flexible, variable pathways. So teachers have multiple opportunities to demonstrate their impact on students and their skills, and it's not limited to one determination. This does enable teacher diversification, as I expressed earlier, and promotion and salary is anchored by their acquisition of skills and competencies and their impact on students, not by time served. So this graphic shows you a representation of how we're envisioning this. So currently we have two license categories, an initial license and a continuing license. This proposal suggests 7 distinct licenses And as teachers move from one license area to another, their compensation moves in accordance with that advancement. And you can see the numbers at the bottom of each of those stages is the salary that's been recommended by our Budget and Compensation Subcommittee. We have modeled this based on current teacher salary, and the vast majority, we mean upwards of 90% of teachers, would see a dramatic increase in salary under this model. There are very, very few instances where teachers would need some kind of hold harmless provision.
This would be the state part of the salary?
This is the state portion of the salary, that is correct. So I want to walk through these licenses with you real quick and explain kind of how one gets there. The first one is the apprentice teacher. So this is just a formalization of the TA to teacher pathway. We want to be very clear. So this would have a salary, a license attached to it. Let me go to the next one. So the proposed salary is $30,000 a year. It is a State Board of Education approved license, but so it's not a classified position. And the requirements here would be an associate degree or 60 credit hours towards a baccalaureate degree, or CTE licensure areas that require 3 years of relevant work experience. These folks must work under direct supervision of a licensed 4 or higher teacher. So these folks would not be teachers of record. They would not be left alone in classrooms by themselves. These are basically your TAs that have indicated they want to pursue licensure. Our proposal is not that we cannibalize the classified positions. Those would still be in the schools and available. These folks would be on the state salary schedule now, and they would have expectations towards moving forward to a license 1. These folks must be served in the employer's State Board of Education approved initial teacher success program. And I want to talk with you briefly about what that is. So it's basically the beginning teacher support program, but because we're not talking about this in terms of time anymore, but in the acquisition of competency and skill, you must support teachers in this program until they show that they have the skills to be a classroom teacher. So we've taken out that beginning and indicated initial to show that these folks will continue to receive support. All these teachers, the apprentice license 1, 2, and 3, will need to receive this kind of support until they've demonstrated that they have the competency and skill to manage a classroom on their own. So that's basically the only difference, is that these folks, that we build it in the support model throughout all those initial license phases. And of course, it would look different depending on what stage you are. An apprentice teacher would require more support than, let's say, a licensed 3 teacher. So there's some questions that we've put through the subcommittee. Apprenticeship can be a formally recognized apprenticeship. Should the state pursue this? Because that does unlock some federal funding that could be important in helping support this system. The apprentice license would be a term of 3 years. If you fail to meet the requirements to advance, then you could always hold the classified TA position. The contract can't be in excess of 1 year. It supplements but does not supplant those classified TA positions. Licensure candidates in clinical residency, so our student teachers, would qualify for the apprentice salary during their 16-week internship. So this is a way to support our student teachers who often find that they have to do a full-time internship and hold a job in order to support themselves.
You may speak to this someplace else, but I would imagine that the community colleges and the universities are in on this with you while you're having these conversations. The EPPs are involved. As of yet, community colleges are not EPPs, but we do have a couple of people from the community college system office that are sitting in on these subcommittees. I would imagine this could change some of the degrees offered in the associate level, or else at least the coursework.
That's right.
Get them to a beginning teacher.
Many of our community colleges do have a kind of the 2+2 with the ed prep programs. So they're doing some of the foundational pedagogy courses at the community college and then transferring over to the university-based EPP for the latter part of it. So yes, you're absolutely right. So the next license is a license 1, and there the proposed salary is $38,000 a year. These are teachers that come to us with a baccalaureate degree or higher. They need to have 18 hours of relevant content towards the license, and they must be affiliated with an EPP or employer that guides their routing. So the supports for these folks are their in-class supervision by an advanced teacher, and we'll talk about those roles in just a minute, for a minimum of 5 hours a week. So we'll get to what those adult leadership roles are right now, but essentially what we're saying is some expert advanced teacher is working with these early career teachers at least 5 hours per week in the classroom with them. This is not a quasi-administrator who's checking in on them a couple times a day or a week, but this is somebody who's with them in the classroom. They are the co-teacher of record with another teacher. This is very important that these folks have not yet demonstrated any pedagogical skill. They may have some content knowledge, but they have not established that pedagogical skill. So they are paired with another teacher who is also supervising them and as a co-teacher of record with those teachers. So they must be served in that ITSP. Their support by the sponsor as defined in the MOUs that exist between the PSU and the EPP. And these folks were proposing a professional advancement account of $2,500 for them to, whatever professional learning they need to advance from a license 1 to a license 2. And that money is specifically tied to the individual. It's managed by the employer, but it's tied to the individual. So they could use those things for things like licensure exams, if that's what they want, college courses, if that's what they need, anything that can help move them from a license 1 to a license 2.
Is the co-teacher the same person as the in-class supervision teacher?
Not necessarily. So there you could have, what we say here is we have 2 advanced teaching roles. One is a classroom excellence teacher, and one is an adult leadership. So this person would be paired as the co-teacher with that classroom excellence teacher, and so they are making sure that those students are getting the support they need and getting the instruction they need, as well as the kind of mentoring activity and the modeling that the adult leadership teacher would bring. So this whole model is built on our best teachers having roles which support our early career teachers and the students in those classrooms to make sure everybody's getting a high quality, highly effective teacher in their classroom.
Are those people who Shell just mentioned, is that being used the same as when it says employer that guides routing? Is that the same type? Is that the mechanism that guides the routing?
Right. So just like in today, let's think about the residency license. So these people on a license 1 would be analogous to your residency license teacher, your first year residency license teachers, and they have to be affiliated with an EPP. And the employer has responsibilities under that as well. So the employer is providing mentoring, which is, here we're articulating how that mentoring kind of plays out. And the EPP is responsible for ensuring that they're getting the professional learning they need to demonstrate these skills and competencies we're talking about.
But this says or, so you don't, right? So you don't need to be.
It says or where, I'm sorry.
It says must be affiliated with an EPP or an employer that guides routing. So I guess I was taking, maybe I was really out.
Right, so let me just be very clear here. So there's a question, there's been a question in some of the subgroups. Can the employer sponsor somebody through this process, or do you have to go through an EPP? Mm-hmm. And that's a huge question. We as staff at DPI elected not to answer that question. So we said, somebody's got to do something here. Who that is the work of these subcommittees. They have to make that determination, because there's, being the guy that oversees the licensure in the preparation areas, I get lots of questions from employers. Look, this person has a master's degree in chemistry and has worked as a chemist for 15 years. Do I have to send them to an EPP, or can I just say that I know this is a great person? And I think that's a great question. It's not DPI's question to answer. It's these folks who are making these policy recommendations. So we purposely left it nebulous because that is a question that has to be answered by these subcommittees.
I'm sorry, you may have said this earlier, but what is the time, I know this is a draft, when's the timeline for these answers and others to be?
Late summer.
Late summer.
Yeah. Yes?
I'm on the flow chart side of things where I'm thinking of a BT or a residency licensure, and their mentorship expectations are quite a bit less than the minimum of 5 hours a week. So they still have to fulfill all the requirements of the BT program as well.
So this ITSP, so a lot of this is going to be implementation questions, which we're not ready to answer till we got the policy framework, but it's a great question. So in our minds, the ITSP is basically the BTSP. Now that may need to be modified depending on where you are, and it probably will. So like we'd have to spell out what an apprentice teacher is receiving, what a license 1 teacher is receiving, what a license 2. And we try to hit that a little bit here, but that's a great question, and that's exactly, that has to be defined in this final model. What does this all look like at your various stages? Yeah. So the next license, well, make sure I don't have anything else. Yeah. So this license is a term of 3 years. And of course, there's always the question, what happens if you don't meet the requirements to move on? Then the solution to that is these folks may hold the classified TA position and work on meeting those requirements. And you can always come back into the model once you've met the requirements you need to get to the next level. So the next license is a license 2, proposed salary of $40,000. Here's where we start putting requirements on the educator to demonstrate their effectiveness or their skill. These are teachers of record. They hold all the requirements to hold a license 1, plus they have preparation sponsor. And again, is this the EPP or the PSU? That's to be determined. So they complete one of the following. They can complete the testing involved, that is the content praxis. Now here we're setting this a little below the cut score. We're saying these people aren't fully ready to be teachers, so if they can get within 10 points of the cut score or 3 on the pedagogy exam, we're going to recognize they can advance to that next level. They're showing some progress towards that. This thing called micro-credentials, which I'll talk about in a minute. So basically these are demonstrations of skill on what we consider high-leverage instructional practices in the classroom. So can you get your students to sit down and listen to your lesson? That's a classroom management skill. So can we measure that? Can teachers demonstrate they have that ability? And then this thing called a practical educator evidence review or peer observation. This is a combination of a principal observation, an advanced teacher, so a license for advanced teacher observation, and student surveys. I'll talk about student surveys in a second. So what we're saying here is on the NESIS instrument that you would be proficient on standards 3 and 4 and not have a not demonstrated anywhere else. And of course, standard 3 is teachers know the content they teach, and standard 4 is teachers facilitate learning for their students. So those content and pedagogy standards. For student surveys, the content and pedagogy scales need to be at the second quartile of agreement. So if any of you have been paying attention to some of the feedback from teachers when they've seen this, teachers do not like the idea of student surveys in this, or students being able to opine on whether their classroom teaching is effective or not. And we've really gone with the research here. Research tells us that students are the best, that their observations of teachers most closely align to student outcomes. They're better than principals, they're better than peer observers. And that makes sense because they're in there every day and seeing what's going on every day. So we know that it's kind of, it's creating a visceral reaction to teachers. And what we're proposing is this is not a requirement, but teachers could use this evidence if they wanted to use that evidence, as opposed to something like the praxis exam or these micro-credentials. So, yes?
Just a quick teacher type question.
Sure.
So I'm a teacher 1. Am I making $38,000 a year until I get to teacher 2?
That's right. And then, but we're going to get to what I think is your underlying question, and I think what you're going after is stagnation of salary, and let me address that a little later. But for these early stages, yes, The salary means the advancement. But I want to be very clear, the term of the license is 3 years. There's nothing to prevent a teacher for after 1 year at a license 1 moving to a license 2. You don't have to sit in that salary for 3 years. It's driven on your motivation and your advancement. So a microcredential is a form of certification earned by demonstrating a skill or competency. They're small, discrete skills. So can I write a lesson plan? Yeah, and I can demonstrate that, and you can see that, evidence of that. And what you do is you take these really small, discrete skills. It's like, let's say my larger skill is classroom management. Can I get students to sit down in their desk when the bell rings? Yeah, that's a small piece, and that's a skill. And then can I redirect students who are off task? That's another little skill. And so you build all these little skills together into this bigger thing called classroom management, and you show your ability, your competency in that larger area, and that's what can move you through the licensure system. We're focusing on high leverage instructional practices. Now, this is based on research by folks like Linda Darling-Hammond, Deborah Ball out of Michigan, who have found that there's these skills that teachers exhibit in a classroom that are highly associated with better student learning. And that's what we're focusing on here. You can measure these things at the basic, intermediate, and advanced level. And as you see here, as we move forward, so for a license 2, we're saying you've met that at the basic level. And here's just a map of what we're talking about. So you could have a micro endorsement such as subject matter expertise, and you've got MC1, microcredential 1, 2, and 3. Those are discrete skills. You meet all 3 of those, you've met the basic level. Then there's 4, 5, and 6. You've completed those, and now you're at their intermediate level. And so teachers, this is scaffolded, so teachers in their early career aren't expected to do advanced stage demonstrations of their competency. It's commensurate with where they are in their learning as an educator, and it's not expecting everything all at once. Yes?
I have another question.
That's okay.
Who provides the observations to credential them in these micro-credentialing? Is this the administrator that is doing observations and walkthroughs? Is this a class they take?
That's a great question. So micro-credentialing, I don't know if any of you are aware, you might be involved in this. This is becoming a vehicle for professional learning in general across the state. That should be able to continue. We're talking about a specific set that would be specific to licensure. So we're not trying to say everybody in the field has to do these things, but you'd have to have a specific set that are the same for everybody if you're talking about using it for satisfying the licensure requirement. And so you would have to have some kind of external observer saying, yeah, this is the microcredential, this is the process, and then here's the teacher's demonstration, and then it's rated in some way as meeting the expectation or not meeting the expectation. So some other considerations here. You need either a category or a component. So a category is content or pedagogy. A component is the way you satisfy that. And so that could be a test, a microcredential, the peer. So we are proposing that EVOS be included in this. If you've got a certain score on EVOS, you can use that as demonstration of that skill as either content or pedagogy, but you can't use it for both. So, and we're really trying hard not to make this whole thing about EVOS, because that's not what it should be. There's a whole lot more that goes on in the classroom than just moving students on a standardized test. But where that exists, it does have a place where teachers can use it if they so choose.
So if you teach something that does not have a test, therefore you do not have an EVOS score, you still have the option of doing the micro-credentials or all that?
That is correct. But to address that, for equity issues, you can also have what we're proposing, this is qualitative growth review. So you could have somebody, an expert teacher, look at your course, your students over the course of the year and say something like art, and they know the standards, and they're saying, okay, those kids have moved a year's worth of growth in that standard. That is a qualitative review. Those of you who remember ASW, people hated it, but that's the only thing that we have. If you wanted to do some kind of measure of your students' growth in a subject that's not tested, that's what we're sticking in there as a placeholder. The point is, student impact is important. You can show that through EVOS, but teachers who don't teach in a tested subject need an equivalent way that they can show their impact on students. I'm not sure what that looks like. That's the placeholder we put in there, but we'll see what the subcommittees come up
What
with.
about before and after, formative and summative, kind of at the beginning of the year, you give some kind of exam on the entire course, and you don't expect anybody to know anything.
That's right.
And then at the end of the year, you give that same exam. Could that be something that could be used for growth?
That's highly possible. So in North Carolina, there was some work about 10 or so years ago. They're called student learning objectives, and that's the kind of system they set up. So all these things are in the realm of possibility, and we're really pushing those subcommittees to say, what does this look like for teachers who don't have tested subjects? Because they should be able to show. Their job is to teach the standards to the kids and grow them on those standards. They should have that same opportunity if we're providing it for folks with EVOS.
And isn't that kind of similar to what we do with BOG anyway, for reading for third grade?
That's right. Yeah, we're doing a pre-post in third grade reading. That's exactly right. So here's just a chart that shows this component and category. Right now, you have one pathway to establishing the license in the state, and that is to take the content examination, which is Praxis Pearson, or the pedagogy, which is EdTPA or PPAT. That's the only route you have. This model says you can have full flexibility. You can choose any category on the component of content, and you can choose any category on the component of pedagogy. So that means for EVOS and that qualitative growth review, you could only use it once, but that gives you about 12 different configurations for any teacher to say, hey, I want to show my content through a micro-credential, and I want to show my pedagogy through EVOS. And I can put those two things together, and I can clear my license. And so this is a lot about offering teachers choice to how they want to demonstrate their competency to hold the license. I talked about this a little bit. This is still kind of heavy asterisks on the qualitative growth review, but we're working on it. The license 2, so they must be served in this ITSP. They have clinical supervision, a minimum now of 5 hours per week. So somebody's coming in to make sure at least 5 hours a week that they have the support they need. This could be co-teaching. This could be modeling a lesson, an advanced teacher modeling a lesson for them, something like that. And again, they still have to have the support by a sponsor, either the EPP or the PSU, and they also get a professional advancement account of $2,500 for the term of that license to advance them to a license 3. Oh, that's for a term of 3 years as well. So a license 3, proposed salary of $45,000. Here they've met whatever that requirement is for the test or the micro-credentials or the peer. They've met that full requirement now at the intermediate level. If it's micro-credentials, it would be at the intermediate level. For test, it would be the State Board of Education cut score. And for the peer review, they are listed as accomplished on standards 3 and 4, and no rating below proficient, and then you have the student surveys. So they would, and again, it's that full flexibility I'm talking about. They can pick and choose from each of the components in order to put together those 2 demonstrations. These folks, again, would be supported by the ITSP, but at a much lower level than what we're seeing in the earlier at the earlier levels of the licenses. They're still under the direction of the PSU and the EPP, and they would have a professional advancement account of $2,500 for the term of that license. This is also a term of 3 years, and non-completers may hold classified TA position if they don't meet those requirements. So here, I want to go back, or I don't want to go back, but I just want to, in the graphic you saw, this had a star at the top of it, the license 3, that said EPP. What's being proposed here is that folks who come out of a North Carolina State Board of Education approved EPP program and meet those competencies like we used to do before we gave everybody the 3 years to pass their exams, if they come out and meet those requirements in advance of employment, those folks would start at a license 3 rather than starting at a license 1. So that provides the incentive. We know from the research in the state that our going through a North Carolina approved EPP produces teachers that persist in the profession longer and on our average are more effective than any other pathway to teaching. So we wanted to do something that incentivizes teachers to go through that traditional program. And the way we've done that is offering that apprentice salary for the student teaching portion, and where they meet those requirements for licensure in advance of employment, that can put them all the way up to a license 3 to start. And so that means somebody coming straight out of college now could earn, out of an EPP program, could earn $45,000 rather than the $35,000 they're earning now. All right. I'm really trying to do this quick, folks. I'm sorry. All right. License 4, proposed salary $56,000 a year. Here's where we move from demonstrating competency to measuring impact on student learning. So the way we put it here is they demonstrate effectiveness 3 qualifying years out of a 5-year window. That could be on the growth measure. That could be on the qualitative growth review. That could be through that peer review process. Whatever it is, what we're saying now is it's not just that you can show us you have the skill, but now you can show that that is impacting the lives of our students. And that's what moves you into the license 4. And there's some those obligations down there are really more related to job expectations rather than license. But the supports are that you've got these advanced teachers that are still working with these folks. There could be micro-credential offerings to help them move to those advanced stages. But this salary is proposed at $56,000 a year. Now this is where the issue of stagnation comes in. Now $56,000 is currently higher than the top of the bachelor's degree salary scale that we see today. But nobody likes the idea of somebody getting to this place at, let's say, year 5, and then the whole 25 years they're still at $56,000. That would not be good. So what we're proposing is that when you renew the license, if you successfully renew the license, that means if you show that impact on student learning 3 out of the 5 years during your renewal period, and you do the PD, the same CEU requirements we have now, then at a successful renewal, you would get a $5,000 salary increase. So if you think about somebody, let's say they got to this salary level at year 10, they're at $56,000, they would have 4 more renewal cycles before they were eligible to retire. That's $20,000 more than what they're making now. So a person entering license 4 at $56,000 at year 10 would be able to make up to $76,000 by the time they retired from their profession.
But from 10 to 15, they would make $56,000 because it's the next renewal cycle before they.
Right. If they got there, so from 10 to 15, they would make $56,000. Then from 15 to 20, they would make $61,000, and then so on.
Would this then eliminate the legislature having to set salaries every biennium?
That's right. That is the proposal. So in the instance where a teacher meets the continuing education requirements but can't meet the student impact or the student growth requirement, the license would still renew, but they would not get that salary differential. So they would maintain their current salary. If you had if you could not demonstrate your impact on student learning in 2 renewal periods, then the license would expire. And that's 10 years of teaching kids without being able to show impact on those students. And that's again what we've recommended, but we'll see what the subcommittees come up with.
So what happens over time, $56,000 right now is a lot of money if you happen to get a teacher.
Sure.
But 15 years from now, that may not be a lot of money. How does that get adjusted? Is that
Right.
legislative?
Yeah, so you're speaking to the cost of living adjustments to the legislature. The expectation of this model is those would still continue based on market analysis and things like inflation. We're not working this into the model, but we're being very clear when we talk to the legislature that that expectation still exists, because that's going to lift the tide for all the boats, and that's going to be important as we move forward. But this is how people advance within that structure.
So the state gives a 4% increase for all state employees, and that threshold goes up.
Yeah, so it's
That's
not
right.
that you don't get a raise at all in that 5-year period, the base salary doesn't change.
That's right. That's right. So, license 4. So, I want to preface this conversation about these advanced roles with this is really founded on the advanced teaching roles that are going on across the state right now in our traditional LEAs. I don't think any charter schools do advanced teaching roles. But this is the idea that the teachers that are recognized in a school as being highly effective should be offered opportunities to extend that effectiveness to as many students as possible. So in one way this works out is what we're calling the classroom excellence. The advanced teaching roles calls this the multi-classroom teacher, where a highly effective teacher may be paired with, let's say, a licensed 1 teacher. So they work together to support a class of, let's say, 50 students. Where the classroom excellence teacher is ensuring that that's all high quality instruction, and many more students than they could normally reach are being subjected to this highly effective instruction. And so we would see this classroom excellence role as these folks are extending their impact over more students than they could in our current models. So one way you show this is by exceeding growth on the EVOS measure 3 out of 5 years. Or you do this practical educator review, but you're meeting that at a distinguished level for standards 2, 3, and 4. And of course, your student surveys would be at a high level as well. So the supports for this would be a professional learning community, which they can all participate in and get feedback across the district on what are the instructional strategies of the district, how do we ensure that these are happening, what are the most effective practices. It's kind of a network among them. These folks would be asked to model lessons, open their classrooms to teachers that could come observe them and learn from them, doing co-teaching, and maybe conducting peer observations. So it's important for this role that we recognize that these are positions. So the salary differential comes with holding the position. I could qualify for this license, and I could meet those qualifications, but if I don't hold the job, in other words, if I say, I qualified for a classroom excellence license, but I don't want to do that teaching more students or working with other teachers, I want to go in my classroom and just teach my regular classes, you don't get the salary differential. You get the 56 for a license 4 or whatever your salary is for a license 4. It's only by taking on those responsibilities do you earn that salary differential. So if you're working to make sure that other teachers are improving and students are learning at higher rates, more students are learning, then you get that differential. Since it's a job, that would be under the control of the PSU. You could take somebody out of that position if you're not finding they're being effective in that role. It doesn't affect their license, but you have the authority, you the employer have the authority over who's in those positions, as long as they hold the license.
How would it be determined how many of those positions any one school gets?
Yep. So that has to be an allotment question. So again, I don't know how that works. I'm not a finance person, so is it done by ADM? It could be done by ADM. It could also be done by the number of license 1, 2, and 3 teachers in your district or in your charter school. So you would need, so for this model to work, you basically need about 1 adult leadership for every 8 entry license level teachers you have, because they have to support those folks. So that's the ratio that we think is right, somewhere between 8 and 10. So you could create a funding model that does it that way, or you could create the funding model that goes strictly on ADM size.
Be interesting to see if there's a way to create the job description for this so that it meets Title I criteria, so that if a school needed more,
they could fund it with those Title I positions. That's correct. And it absolutely should, because, I mean, the whole idea here is that we're ensuring that no student is left with a teacher that doesn't know what he or she is doing. I'm not trying to frame this in a way that this is a deliberate act on the part of the teacher. They may not have the training and know how to do what they're expected to do. And we're ensuring that no teacher is left in that situation through this model, that they're always going to be a highly effective teacher overseeing what's going on in that classroom. So the advanced teaching role, adult leadership, is really about the classroom excellence is about ensuring that all students are getting high quality instruction. The advanced teacher, adult leadership, we still want to know that's a highly effective teacher with students, but they also have the additional skill of helping adults learn. And their focus is ensuring that every early career teacher is being supported and has the means to become a great teacher. So these folks, very similar in the requirements to a classroom excellence teacher, except they have to have shown through some kind of micro-credential or some kind of competency-based effort that they know how to lead adults as opposed to leading students, or in addition to leading students.
Will there be any support for PD for these people?
There would have to be, yes. So we're envisioning, and so you can see there, we're envisioning some kind of micro-credential that folks could go through. So with any micro-credential, there's the learning piece of it that has to be there, as well as the demonstration piece. So if you want to think about that micro-credential in adult leadership is, here's how they learn how to do it, and then here's how they demonstrate that they have that skill or competency. And again, this is a position. You can qualify for the license, but if you don't hold the position, you don't get that salary differential. So this puts this person at a salary of $73,000 a year, roughly. And then, just like the license 4, when they renew that license, that makes their license 4 base salary eligible for $5,000 more. So you could see somebody making somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 if they were in the role for an extended period of time. And this just is a repeat that you could, when you're renewing the license, if you don't meet that advanced level, but you still meet the license 4, that's okay, but you lose that designation, you could no longer hold the role, and it is a position, so the PSU has the authority over who they put in there, and they can remove them at any time, but that doesn't have impact on the license, whether they choose to do that or not.
There's just a lot of really good stuff in there. One of the things I really love about it is how it incentivizes teachers to keep teaching.
Yes.
And not become dean of whatever.
Right. And that was largely the goal, is we know that there's a lot of teachers. I mean, if we just look at the number of teachers who have gotten an MSA and not used it, so that shows us they're conflicted. Like they got an MSA to be a principal, but they can't bear to leave the kids. And so we need something to support these folks that they can have real career advancement, and they know what that looks like. And I think some of you in this room may remember it was back in the early 90s, I think, Career Ladder. It was the term. So that was totally built on professional development, not on any differentiated roles in the school. This really looks to the things you're already doing. You have things like instructional coaches. You have things like curriculum facilitators that are designed to help these people. What we're doing is formalizing that, ensuring that only those people with advanced skills get in those roles, and teachers see that recognized pathway of how to move up, but without having to leave the classroom.
Any of the work that you guys done, have you guys discussed the impact this might have on school leadership and administration particularly? Like if I know that I could have stayed in the classroom and made an outstanding salary and not have to deal with the headaches that keep you up until 2 in the morning?
That's the point.
Yes, so we recognize that this is going to kind of butt up against the administrator role. And one of the things, and part of that is by design. So we talk about principals as instructional leaders, but that's a really hard thing for them to accomplish. Especially, even if you had a great instructional leader, can that person build capacity in 70, 80 people that they're overseeing? And the answer to that question is no. There's no organizational research that supports that kind of ratio. And so this helps that. And so we're thinking about this as principal, as leader of instructional leaders. So they're going to have 8 to 10 people that they're putting the trust of the instructional leadership of the school into their hands, and they're monitoring them.
Is this going to change the description, or is there been talk about how principals are on a schedule similar to something like this?
So, yeah. So the superintendent's Operation Polaris has already contemplated this kind of HR, human capital. We've been given, these are really big rocks to move. So we've taken on the teacher role as the largest. We recognize that this has to happen for administration, and it has to happen for instructional support folks as well. Instructional support is not in this model. This is classroom. And it has to happen for our classified, because all these roles are critical to student learning and advancement. And so the superintendent's given us a little grace on we can start with teachers, but then as soon as this kind of gets in the pipeline, we've got to immediately start working on administrators and our instructional support and classified.
So how teachers currently hold licenses?
Yeah.
As you transition to this, how are you going to figure out, are you a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 4 plus, or like how's that happen?
That's a great implementation question. So how do you convert everybody from the old system to the new system? And there's been some talk about how you do that. So one, I have to say again that in terms of salary, there are very, very few teachers that this would not be an increase for them. And so we think that's going to be easy. So, but then you can do things like you can you could do an implementation where only the teachers coming into the profession are under this, and everybody's allowed to kind of move out of. That's a really slow implementation, because that could take you 30 years to get it fully implemented. You could do things like everybody, any renewal cycle after, let's say, 2025, once you complete a full renewal cycle, then you're enrolled in this model. That gives everybody a long runway to understand what that is and what it looks like. There are lots of different implementation strategies to this. I just don't know. Until I have the policy and if you look at this really, you don't even have to look at it closely. This requires a lot of change to statute. And so until that piece happens, there's no way to really start talking about, okay, logistically, how do I do these things? Because this is very General Assembly dependent if it's ultimately going to go through.
I love the forward thought that's gone into this, quite honestly. I know there's probably a lot of wrinkles to work out, but like Cheryl, I like the fact that it kind of, as a teacher, gives you something to be almost like new teachers now, like gaming, like leveling up, right?
Right.
It gives me something to shoot for, to kind of level up to get to the next height. So I like that.
And it's constant professional development as you're trying to get to that next level. That's motivated by you, not by us saying you have to go do X.
That's right. So yes. So teachers could, if you think about it, teachers could just say level 4 is great for me, and that's a career path, and it still gives them the opportunity to advance and take it easy if they want to. Honestly, you couldn't do it 2 cycles in a row, but you certainly could. It's the right amount of tension, I think, between requirements and letting people decide, I don't want to be the superstar, I want to just be a great teacher. So
it would, however, require the use of the NESAs by everybody who was using it, everybody who was in the system.
Everybody's participated in the licensure process, and to speak to that, it's whatever tool we're using. So, I mean, we could see, this could promote a redesign of how we look at the evaluation process as well.
To what degree do you anticipate this requiring 2 teachers in a classroom?
Yeah, in some cases it might. And so that's part of the funding model that we have to talk to the General Assembly about. The reality is we're doing that now. We're not doing that now, and we see what the impact on student learning is for our kids, especially in those situations where our newest teachers are put into the most difficult environments and are not being successful, and we kind of wonder why. And so this does have some redundancy, but we're of the opinion that redundancy is necessary to ensure that these folks are getting what they need to become great educators, and the students who are in those classrooms are not suffering as a result of that learning period. And so
one of the other things is you're looking at, when you start talking about funding model, that some of the money that goes to low-performing schools, to support them with a lower ratio, so they could have more classes with 2 teachers in the room.
Right.
Because of that, because you get inexperienced teachers in those schools without the support necessary. So some of that money that goes to target those schools be directed at helping them to be able to afford to do that.
Right.
So to clarify, if you have a teacher who is being unsuccessful in delivering content, they can opt for an evaluation form or a path that doesn't really assess that area?
Well, so say the first part of that again. They're not able to
You have
do
a
what?
teacher, as you were referring there, they're not successful in delivering the content, they're not seeing student success, but their pathway can be measured on a different component of their practice.
But so all those pathways in some way get at whether the teacher is being successful with those kids in the terms of their delivery of their knowledge of the content or their method of delivery, so the content or the pedagogy. They just get at them in different ways. So for like the peer review, so basically you would have to have a situation as a teacher that you get the principal to say, all right, even though I'm not doing these things that are listed in the evaluation instrument as me doing them, you got to get the principal to say that that's happening, even though it may not be. You got to get an expert teacher to say it's happening, and you got to get all the kids in the class to say that it's happening. And the likelihood of that is pretty low. And so that's, the evaluation instrument has bias in it. We know that. What we're doing with that piece is saying everybody's bias is unique. So if you get a whole bunch of different people, that's the way you get rid of that bias and get at what's really truly going on. And so the more people you can get observing that behavior, the more likely you are that you're going to get a true, accurate reading of that. So that's the idea there. And I'm going to be really disappointed if I don't get a question from Dr. Stoops.
No, as I wrote about this, implementation is my biggest worry.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Mine too.
Something that's sophisticated, and not only that, we have a licensure department that has trouble keeping up with the current load, and we were going to be multiplying that several times over. So as I think about it, and as I talk to members of the General Assembly about it, that is really what they're thinking about. Because I think they support it conceptually, but, the best laid plans when it comes to implementation sometimes.
Sure. I agree. I tell the folks that are working on these subcommittees, you guys are struggling over this. This is tip of the iceberg. How do you roll this out once you've figured out whatever it is you want it to be is really where the job is. To one of those points, though, we are in the middle of conducting an RFP for a new licensure system, and one of the things we wrote into that was we have to have a licensure system that can support what we're doing now and some future state where we don't even know what it is. And that's been really helpful in us in guiding that, is to know that this is going to be complicated and is going to change in the middle of everything. We're going to have to shift everything we're doing in relation to how you license a teacher, and that's big work. I am optimistic but daunted at the same time.
Well, I think that as someone that's in the non-teaching role that is interested in teaching, looking at the way it is right now and trying to get licensed, there's a lot of people that are just like, I'm just not willing to go through all that.
Right.
But you see something that's a little bit more clear cut like this, I think hopefully something like this will help deal with the teacher shortage too, and getting some people that are out there to come this way.
Yeah.
Are there any thoughts on looking or revising the NESIS, the evaluation system, at least the rubric and whatnot?
So I'm going to look to Jamie. I think I've heard the superintendent say that she thinks we need to do, we need to look at the teacher evaluation, but I can't remember. Have you heard that as well? I mean,
I would just say there's a lot of those type of conversations happening, but short session is going to be really fast, and so we're going to be looking at a lot of stuff for the long session. So we'd love to talk to you about that if you want to go.
I think most of the research on this, though, because there's lots of people. You should do Danielson. You should use this person. You should do that person. I think most of the research tells you that it's not the tool; it's the commitment to what good evaluation is. And I think we need to recognize that if we had the best instrument in the world, what we're asking principals to do, observe with fidelity 60, 70, 80 employees over the course of a year, it's just not possible. And so I would say with this, if you're finding that we have now the capacity to do those really good evaluations, is the NESIS the problem, or was it that we were just expecting people who can't possibly meet the expectations? Was that the problem? Was it the capacity problem, or was it the instrument problem? And this will help us resolve that. In the end, if we see, once we have the capacity, if it's still the instrument that's the problem, then I think that's a great conversation to go down. But it could very well turn out that once we have the capacity, this works just fine. And I don't know the answer to that. I am not necessarily an advocate for the current system or not. But I'm not fully convinced that it's the instrument that's the problem, and our method of implementation is more probably the problem.
Great job, man.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Please don't let me be a stranger. I've always enjoyed coming to these. This was a little easier than most in the past, but
Alex isn't here anymore.
Alex is gone.
No, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
I think it's the Dave show now.
Okay.
Anytime.
I just won't take very long. As far as State Board of Ed updates, as you remember, there was a hearing on the Torchlight Academy last week, or the week before, and they made a recommendation to the State Board, and the State Board upheld the decision to close Torchlight at the end of the year. Sabah's request to add the sixth grade additional students was approved, and Chatham Charter's request to implement the National School Lunch Program was approved. They discussed the charter school annual report. I want to give Ashley a big shout out for a great report and a great presentation. TMSA request to merge boards and update their mission statement. They also discussed Old Mainstream Academy's request to implement a weighted lottery, Oak Hill Charter School's request to increase their enrollment, North Oaks Charter request for a second-year delay, and Revitalize Charter School's request to lower their enrollment. So all those items will be voted on in their June meeting. As far as OCS updates, again, very pleased to have Jenna on board now. So we're back to full staff. Really hoping during the short session, we might get a couple more positions. We really appreciate Jamie working on that for us. We're almost finished with all our virtual renewal visits. We have 40 renewal schools that you guys will be listening, looking at, and deciding for next year. We continue to verify charter schools' alternative BT evaluation plan. Transportation grant, we had 50 schools receive funds for the grant. They received $2.5 million. We've exhausted all the allotted funds in the first semester reimbursement, so there'll be no funds available for the second semester. And the amount of money requested was obviously higher than we had, so FBS had to lower the amount a little bit proportionally so everybody could get some funds. The NC Access Fellow Sessions continue, and the NC Access team is conducting in-person monitoring visits, which is really good because we're now going back into the school and meeting with these schools. And again, want to give a huge shout out to the NC Access team for what they presented today and what they've been doing for the last couple of years. Ashley and I had the privilege to participate in Chatham Charter's senior mock interviews. We appreciate Dr. Eldridge inviting us, and always impressed at the caliber of students at your school, Dr. Eldridge. We've had 2 bond hearings that we've had to facilitate, and we obviously were on site for the Three Rivers Academy closures on the Friday and the Monday, so we've been awful busy. Happy to answer any questions. No, that's it.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Once it's ready.
With no further business, I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have lunch, Ashley?
12:41.